My name is Michael Ferrari of Cinema to Meep. Welcome to episode 38 of the Retro Movie Love podcast. We're back, guys, and we're talking about more 1987 movies. Yes, that's right. That song you just heard is a big clue to a certain movie we'll be talking about later. And we have a big show for you because I have recorded a couple of not interviews but podcast segments, if you will, about a couple of 1987 movies, February 1987 movies. That's right, we're going to do the same structures as we did last podcast. January 1987, we covered all the movies that were released that month, and I just kind of went through like each week and what came out, and some movies I talked about more, some movies I didn't talk about too much. I'm going to do the same thing this time. I'm actually going to focus mostly on two titles. We have a couple of pals of the show who are going to come on and talk about a couple of the titles. And we're going to get to one of those segments shortly. And before we do that, I just wanted to talk about a couple of things that I watched recently. I want to get into that, and then we'll go into our February 1987 list. And now, I was going through the Oscar movies. I was trying to catch up with some of them, and I made a 2016 best of list. I finally got to another 2016 movie that I liked a lot called 20th Century Women, starring Annette Bening, and I thought she was really great in the film, and kind of sad that she was passed over for an Oscar nomination this year. I think she really deserved an Oscar nomination, if not win, because she's pretty great in this movie, and it's a period film. It's but like California in the 70s, and I just kind of love the look and feel of this movie, and I kind of wanted to live in it for a while, and I'm glad I got to see it finally. And a lot of good actors in the film, and you probably know about it now, but I think if you're kind of hesitant on taking a look at it, I think it's definitely worth a watch. It's from the director of Beginners, which was a nice surprise as well. I think this movie kind of surprised me in how strong it was, especially Annette Bening's performance. Also, I saw two 2017 movies recently, and I'm kind of surprised how much I liked both of these movies. Now, if this is an indicator of this year, it's going to be a pretty good year for movies because I really enjoy these movies in theaters. I went to see recently with my wife, who wanted to see a Valentine's Day movie, and she picked John Wick Chapter 2. And not the usual kind of Valentine's Day movie, yeah, for sure, but you know what? This movie is romantic as fuck, I gotta say. This is a guy who, if you've seen John Wick 1, who's kind of tortured by certain things that happened in his life and happens to the people he loves, and it picks up right where the first one left off, and it's pretty amazing for a sequel, I gotta say. I was totally entertained from beginning to end. Keanu Reeves is great. The action in this movie is nonstop and wonderfully choreographed. I mean, the fight sequences in this movie are just riveting. I was on the edge of my seat, literally. I felt I was just totally in for the full ride of this movie. And I feel like I haven't seen an action movie this good in a while. Really loved it. I was totally entertained. And then the other 2017 movie I actually saw just today. And it's a movie that's getting good buzz and it's getting good box office. It's called Get Out, the new horror film, directed by Jordan Peele. And this is his film debut. Now, wow, what a debut it is. I won't say too much about it since it's brand new. No spoilers, of course. I loved it. I love this one. I love John Wick. I think they're perfect entertainments, popcorn entertainments, but also with Get Out, you get something that's also thought-provoking too, but not in a heavy-handed way. Not in a way that's like trying to sell me a message and like spoon-feed it with sugar. No, this movie is entertaining as all get out, and it's really well done. There was things about it that reminded me of 70s horror movies and things about it that remind me of 90s horror movies, and I like the mix of the two. I think it's a great mix, great balance, and I loved it. So 2017 movies absolutely entertained me, and I was kind of surprised by how much they have. Maybe I'm being a little bit selective these days by not going to see everything that's in theaters, unlike what I did back in 1987, seeing everything in theaters, so seeing a lot of crap. So I'll be talking about some crap today, but also some good stuff. So maybe I'm being more selective, seeing good films, movies that I think I might really enjoy, but I'm also seeing a trend where studios are taking a bit of a chance on certain movies. Now, Get Out is a big chance for a studio like Universal. Now, Universal's distributing the film, but Blumhouse produced the film. And I feel like they're taking a lot of chances, this company, and I'm really excited to see where they go with it. I think Get Out is going to be a movie that a lot of people will talk about, and will get people interested in talking and having a dialogue about films, about popular entertainments, and that's really important. I think we need to talk about these movies, not just go to a movie and then forget about it. I think that's, it's fine to do that, and I do that a lot. I feel like we need, on a kind of a pop level, just to like have something to really gauge audiences and get them really roused up and get them talking. I think that's the kind of movie that'll do that. And John Wick too, again, pure entertainment. So we need that. We need movies that are fun, but also well done and stylish and offer other things. So a good start to the year, and I'm excited to see where things go. Got my scotch next to me today, of course, my trusty old friend who's always with me. I had to go see Get Out today because I was pretty stressed out this morning, and I needed a reliever, and horror movies are definitely stress relievers. I don't know if it's for everybody, but for me, certainly, I feel like it's a good way to really exercise get your fear, tap into those emotions, and I feel like it really, by the time a good horror movie is over, I feel like a new man. And so scotch also helps, and that too, it aids greatly. All right, getting into February 1987, I'm going to, like I said, go through some titles quickly because there's two titles in particular. We kind of have big conversations about them. So I'm going to get into the first title. There was a movie called The Assault. I'm not sure what that is. But Black Widow is the next title. Here is the TV spot. And I have an interview. Actually, not an interview. We have a conversation. We have a conversation with a good friend of the show. We'll talk about it together. Here's the TV spot.
Every man she marries mysteriously dies.
She married 3 different men. She killed all of them.
That's not something you see a woman do.
Which part you figure a woman isn't up to? The seduction or the murder?
Alex Barnes has uncovered the truth.
You don't quit your job to go chasing after some phantom.
I know I'm right.
But proving it could be fatal. Deborah Winger, Teresa Russell, Black Widow. She mates and she kills. Rated R.
Starts Friday, February 6th at a theater near you.
Okay, so that's the TV spot for Black Widow, a film by Bob Rafelson starring Deborah Winger and Teresa Russell. So joining me with this one is my co-host, Ben Sher. Welcome back to the podcast, Ben.
Woo!
Thank you for joining me again for this.
You're very welcome.
I know it's we usually do top fives together and a bunch of titles, but today we're just doing the one title, and I kind of like it. What are your thoughts about just talking about one movie today?
Yeah, it's a little surreal, but at the same time, it's kind of nice because I really have gotten to spend the last few days just like thinking about Black Widow and reflecting on it. Whereas when we're talking about like 10 movies or whatever, it's, you know, you got to just kind of cram a lot into your head. So this is enjoyable. And Black Widow is a movie that requires a lot of reflection.
It does. It's interesting when looking back at doing some research for this film and just people, I think, have interesting opinions about it. I feel like it can go either way with people. Like certainly criticism of the time. You had critics who absolutely loved it, and critics who were just kind of like shrugged their shoulders and just discounted it as a mediocre thriller. So I don't know what you guys are opinion on Black Widow, but I think for us, I know we have a mutual love for it. So we're going to talk about the love for Black Widow today. And
it would be nice if there were some heated debates. Facebook board.
If you want to see a heated debate, check out the Siskel and Ebert review of it. It's like a quick at the movies thing, and Ebert didn't like it, and then Siskel just loved it, and they kind of got into it for very quickly about it, and then went on to the next movie. But they seem to be pretty split on that one.
Oh, I can't wait to watch it. I've never seen it. That's great.
It's on YouTube just for that one title, Black Widow. All right. So how did this movie first come to you? To your consciousness?
I have a history with Black Widow. I first discovered it, I saw the commercial for it right after it started showing on pay cable, so it was probably right after it came out on video, on the preview guide, which I talk about a lot. It was that TV guide station with the scrolling listings on the bottom of the screen, and they would show commercials of what was on in the top right corner, and for some reason I would just watch it for hours, and I discovered a lot of movies on it. So I was immediately attracted to it because it was like women, glamour, sex, murder, which were basically the 4 things that I looked for in movies at that time, as I do now. Maybe also like ghosts and slashers, but I mean it was up there. So I really wanted to see it, but I kind of didn't get a think about it because I was super young at that time. I was probably like 6 years old or something, so I wasn't really in a position to get my mom to rent it for me at the video store just yet. The next year probably I would have. And I didn't get Cinemax, so I couldn't see it on then, so I just kind of forgot about it. So then a few years later, I woke up at like 3 a.m. and turned on my TV. And the movie it's about Deborah Winger plays an FBI agent, and Teresa Russell plays a woman who can't help but marry rich men by disguising herself as exactly their type and then murdering them. And Deborah Winger kind of gets on to her and becomes obsessed with her. And they start to have this kind of cat and mouse relationship, but like Deborah Winger is kind of obsessed with Teresa Russell and like kind of just like, you almost sense he like wants to be her a little, and Teresa Russell's actually like a really nice person, maybe, so they become friends, and Teresa Russell gives her a makeover. It's complicated. It's complicated. But the whole thing, you never really know whose motives are coming from where, which is one of the nice things about this movie. So anyway, in the latter half of the movie takes place in like Hawaii or Malibu, or not Malibu, Hawaii, some tropical paradise. So I turned it on. It was the scene where Teresa Russell's at a glamorous party, like making out with one of her rich husbands, and I was like, oh, this is interesting. I didn't realize what the movie was, but I watched it until the end, and I was like, that was fascinating. But then it was challenging at that time to like find out what movie you were watching sometimes, because like if you didn't have the current TV guide, like you couldn't figure it out. So I just didn't know what the movie was. And I thought about it for years. Like, what was that movie where there was a glamorous blonde woman making out with a guy and then shooting some detective, and then there was another woman with curly brown hair. Like, I was young. I must have been young because I didn't know Deborah Winger. I didn't know Teresa Russell, or I would have been able to identify it. So it was just kind of this mystery for a long time. And then finally, like years and years and years later, like when I don't even know when, not even that long ago, I think I was in LA. I finally rented it. So I got that fabulous movie that I always wanted to see on Cinemax. I never got to. And then I was like, holy shit, it's the movie. It's the movie with the blonde woman and then the tropical party and the curly brown hair lady and the murdering. And like, I still don't know like what all those things added up to. And even having watched the whole thing now, I'm still not sure if I know. But this is like I was just watching it before we started to record, and it's such a bizarre movie, and this is what I love and miss about 1980s Hollywood, because everybody thinks of it as this like period of the blockbuster, and like the 70s New Hollywood was dead and yada yada yada, but there was this kind of middle ground of mid-budget genre movies that could just be really, really fucking weird, and while still being very popular, like appealing in a popular way. And to me, Black Widow like is the key exemplar of that kind of movie in the 80s. And often those movies fell into the erotic thriller genre, even though actually Black Widow is not really erotic at all in any conventional sense. Like, I don't think it has any actual sex scenes. It's more like erotic and like this weird, intangible, like Teresa Russell and Deborah Winger buying an outfit together, and that's like erotic. Mm-hmm. Or like or Teresa Russell like looking at a man in a certain way before killing him, and then he's dead in the next scene, but somehow that's erotic. So there are a lot of really odd things about this movie. The main thing that's odd about it is Teresa Russell, who's like my favorite, and I love her so much, and she's perfect in this movie. But she has like the flattest fucking affect, and like I think people criticize Teresa Russell for that sometimes. Although she doesn't always have a flat affect. She doesn't have a flat affect in horror, but she has a kind of deadpan voice, and it seems extra deadpan and monotone in Black Widow, and it's great because it's counteracted by these crazy looks she has in every scene, because her like gimmick is that she dresses up like the woman who her target would want to marry. So in the first scene, she has like this icy blonde, like Bobby in Dress to Kill Jew, and a full length mink coat and huge sunglasses. Then the next scene, she's like a Southern belle working for a toy tycoon played by Dennis Hopper, who's really adorable in this movie. And she has this like busty, short, turquoise, shiny silk dress with like giant red hair and a really unconvincing Southern accent. And then my favorite look, she gets together with this, like, I don't even know he looks like this very wealthy museum benefactor. So she becomes a nerd and like wears like these kind of like all like tan, like Ally McGraw in Love Story, Ivy League outfit with like long brown hair, and like talks about the history of coinage and like how to tune a piano, and she just makes herself really boring and nerdy, which is so great, because I mean usually you don't think of femme fatale making herself into like a New England WASP nerd, but her voice is so flat, and it really, like, I had some people criticize that at the time. They're like, oh, she's not charismatic, but I think that's actually part of the commentary, that these men aren't even looking for a personality. They're just looking for this kind of type that they feel they belong with or that they should fetishize. So it makes an interesting commentary about what men look for in a woman. Then there's Deborah Winger, who obviously I'm obsessed with in all things, and she's just this kind of what's the word, disheveled FBI with her curly long brown hair, and she makes TV dinners and is just like kind of going about the motions. And every time I watch it, I'm like, oh, I relate to her so much. Like, she's like kind of like her life is dominated by her work, and like she just kind of is just like whatever about all of it, and she's just kind of like just like not having it. And she has great hair, but she doesn't realize it, which was true of me until I lost all of my hair. So she kind of becomes obsessed with her. And the thing about Deborah Winger's plot line that's bizarre is that it's really, really obvious that she's onto something. She's like, look, all of these men have mysteriously died, and I have pictures of their wife, of each of their wife, and it's all Teresa Russell, but with different wigs. And like all the like cops and the law enforcement people, like nobody believes her. They just laugh at her. They're like, "Oh, you just don't know what you're talking about. You're just a woman." And I every time I watch it, I'm like, I don't even get what's going on there. But I guess it's just like men are just totally dumb and useless, and that's the message of this movie. Like they're like unbelievably incompetent. It's like very bizarre, but it almost gives the movie like a performance art quality. It has all the kind of trappings of a genre movie. It looks like an erotic thriller. It sounds like an erotic thriller. It feels like an erotic thriller. But nothing about it fits together in a conventional way. And that's so awesome to me. And then when they meet, so then Deborah Winger starts following her around the world and stalking her. And I guess like nobody cares that she left her job. And she follows her to this tropical paradise and they become best friends. Teresa Russell gives her a makeover. It's one of the most unfortunate makeovers. I mean, Melanie Griffith and Deborah Winger both needed to be told to keep their big, fabulous hair. Like, when they cut it, it's not as fun. But especially with Deborah Winger, I hate her makeover hair doing this movie.
It's like a big round ball, isn't it? Like it's like almost like an afro, but not quite, you know?
It's kind of like an afro meets a mullet.
Yeah.
I know it's kind of a hairdo that was a thing in the 80s, but it's not. Her natural hair is much better.
Yeah,
but she gets some nice dresses. And then they're just like hanging out in Hawaii, like doing like weirdly, like possibly trying to kill each other the whole time, but like also just being best friends and sisters, which is great. And it reminds me of Summer Lovers kind of. It's like the first half of the movie is like Basic Instinct and the second half is like Summer Lovers. And who could ask for anything more than that? So it's, and then the end is very inconclusive. And like the whole time there's like all the suggestion that maybe they're like lesbians and maybe they need to just be lesbians, but it never comes to fruition, probably because it was the 80s. Although I think that somebody, the screenwriter on the Blu-ray says like, no, like he didn't mean them to be lesbians. The 80s did not keep him from making them lesbians. He just didn't want them to be. The one more interesting thing that I'll say before I'll stop my spiel is that I really like it every time I watch it that Teresa Russell like doesn't want to kill her husbands. Like that's the thing about her. She's like not an ice cold bitch, and she's not like she might be a sociopath like Catherine Trammell, but she seems like a really nice person, and like she just has to kill her husbands. Like she just can't help it. She cries when they're dead. Like she doesn't want them to be dead, but she just has to kill them. And that's a really interesting thing. Like you feel like she really she knows Deborah Winger's onto her, so she probably has to kill her, but like she really likes her and she's excited to be making this connection with her. And again, it's just not what you expect, and it's really awesome. So I could watch this movie forever. Like this movie and Body Double are just, you would think they wouldn't be comforting to me because they're all about sordid, violent things, but they're just like warm cocoa to me. They're like blankets that I can wrap myself up in and feel safe. So that's my long spiel on Black Widow. What are your thoughts on it?
I'm going to defend her Afro perm a little bit because I did kind of like it. It was just a very different look for her, but I do like her longer hair more for sure.
Okay, well, I'm glad that you're coming to the Afro defense.
Also, hair wise, you can kind of side with the cops a little bit because to her credit, Teresa Russell has some really convincing looking wigs in the movie, which is very rare to say on this podcast. Usually the wigs are the things I look at the most, but I feel like her looks when she's married to her husbands are all kind of convincing, even though like some of her accents aren't for sure, but her looks are very interesting and convincing to me.
That's a good point. It almost is like she could be different people.
I like that about it. Though we know Teresa Russell, we kind of like she has a very specific look. And so her eyes definitely give her away anytime I think of Teresa Russell. But she doesn't inhabit those roles really well, which is part of the quite a few things this movie has to say about women and the roles they have to play in their lives to make themselves happy and pleasing their man. All the men in this movie are pretty miserable for the most part, or are very demeaning, especially to women. And whether they mean to or not, like the French guy later on in Hawaii, I don't think he means to be so chauvinistic, but he is, because he is juggling the two women. But by that point, he's even though Teresa Russell's letting it happen for her own reasons, he is going with it and not complaining, of course.
If she wasn't a killer, and if Deborah Winger wasn't just having sex with him to get to her, then it would be really inconsiderate of him on both parts.
I think the only sympathetic performance by a man in the movie is Nicole Williamson, who plays that art collector philanthropist guy. I think he gives when Deborah Winger comes to him, I love their scene together, and she kind of lets him know in a way that she's kind of onto his wife, and she's there to warn him, basically. But he kind of understands what's going on a bit, but he kind of lets it happen too, because I guess of whatever issues he has with women. And
love so much. And by the way, I have to say, I love how much homework she did to get together with him. She had to read a million books.
I love that. I love that she had she has this secret locker where she has all the stuff ready for her next husbands, including the stuff she will poison them with. She really does her homework. She's great at. I think both of them really are good at their sleuthing and
jobs.
And I like how the movie mirrors them a bit in different ways. And I don't know. I just always dug this film. I saw it when it first came out in theaters, February 6th. This is the beginning. We're at the beginning of February. This is the first official movie for this month for me. And
it almost opened this week.
That's true. Yeah, it's just almost it's 30 years ago this month. It's amazing.
God.
I saw it at the Marlboro Theater, so it was up the block from me. So it was an easy thing just to go see. Of course, an R-rated movie, but those were easy for me to go, especially at that theater. They just kind of let me in. They knew me pretty well, and I liked it. I really liked it when I first saw it, and I wasn't sure why I liked it. I think it was subsequent viewings on home video and DVD later, the things that I appreciated about it now kind of came surfaced more later on. I think I appreciated Deborah Winger in the role. That's what probably drew me to it. I remember going to school the following Monday, and my friend had asked me what I had, because I told him I was going to see a movie on Friday, and he's like, "What did you go see?" And I told him I went to see Black Widow, and he's like, "Why?" And I'm like, "I don't know, because it looked good. The trailer looked good. She mates and she kills. I mean, that sounds pretty good to me." And I just remember just enjoying it, and just kind of not so much feeling proud that I was enjoying a movie made for adults for a kid, but I just kind of liked that I could appreciate those movies as well. It was pretty misunderstood. I think it's a pretty misunderstood thriller. I mean, there are many things about this movie that are just draw me to it, like the cinematography.
Gorgeous.
Amazing. One of the most gorgeous thrillers for sure of the time period. This was shot by Conrad Hall, who's a great cinematographer. He hadn't made a movie in 11 years before this.
Right.
And that movie just happened to be Marathon Man, another gorgeous movie. And but when this movie shifts locations, and of course all the locations in this movie are real. It's like when it's set in New York, they shoot in New York. When it's set in DC, they actually shoot in DC. And it's set in Hawaii later in the film, they actually shoot in Hawaii, which is pretty amazing. And
it is. I never thought about that, but that's so true.
I love that movies did that back then. They didn't cheat it as much because these were studio, like you said, mid-level studio movies, so they could afford to do that a bit and let directors kind of take chances a little bit, like Bob Rafelson, who he hadn't made a movie I would say 6 years prior to this. It was I guess I would say, a more erotic thriller, The Postman Always Rings Twice.
Oh, right.
Remake, and that was pretty erotic. So he definitely had his high level of sex in that one. Maybe he decided he didn't want to sex us up too much and kind of suggest things more with this one, which I thought was interesting. I know I've listened to an interview with him, and he or read an interview with him, and he did say that he did have to hold back a little bit because it was a studio film made in America, and if it was actually made, he said, if it was made if I would made this movie in France, they would be totally in love with each other, the characters.
Oh, interesting. Okay, maybe I misremembered.
Which I like that idea. Definitely, you can kind of shows a bit. And I think that's some of the problems that some of the critics had too at the time. They wanted more of it, but I think the movie suggests enough, which I like.
And in some ways, they have a connection with each other much more than Teresa Russell and any of her men.
That's true. Yes, I mean, and then just because all the men again are scummy, like including Deborah Winger's boss, played by Terry O'Quinn, who
is such a scum. Although her little friend D.W. Moffat isn't such a jerk. He's kind of cute and nice.
That's true. He's one of the exceptions too. But Terry O'Quinn, I love Terry O'Quinn. He of course he was in our previous month. It's titled The Stepfather, and so he's on a roll here at 87, getting some really good roles.
Really good roles as piece of shit people.
Exactly. He's pretty good at them. And somehow he's yet likable, too.
Yeah.
Oh, I love the offices that she worked in, how drab they were and sad, and the windows were painted green because because she worked for the Justice Department, and I just like the look of that. Just kind of made her world even more sad. And you kind of, after viewing this movie for a few times, I'm like, why does she just leave her job and her life to go follow this girl? She's that obsessed. And then, like, what is she really leaving behind? That really depressing job, and that depressing life that she has in that apartment, and I just, like, you can kind of see why she just wants to. She's kind of following her gut and her instincts, and even if it means leaving behind a sad life, why not?
I was just noticing today that the scenes when she's looking for Teresa Russell are gorgeous, and there is this liberating feeling. You always see her outside in these different locations, and it's beautiful and it's amazing, aside from these, like, nightmarishly drab offices. So searching for Teresa Russell just makes her excited. She's following her passion.
It's true. She becomes alive. The movie becomes very colorful, and especially when it shifts to Hawaii, of course, and it's that scene where they're, like, talking in front of the volcano erupting. I mean, it's like, it's not CGI, people. This is like them actually standing there talking while this volcano is erupting in Hawaii. It's pretty amazing. You can kind of tell because the soundtrack it's kind of hard to hear them, and I think another film, like especially a modern film, would just kind of dub their voices over really clearly.
Yeah.
Whereas Bob Rafelson just kind of lets it play out, and as a scene, like we're right there, utilizing the beautiful nature that's the thing that's happening in the background, and almost using it as a way to advance the story. I love that about it.
Were they actually in danger behind the scenes in that scene? I think I heard that somewhere, that like the rocks were coming at them or something crazy like that.
I could probably imagine when that French guy talks about like how he's going to build like his hotel there. I'm like, really? You're going to build a hotel by a erupting volcano? Good luck with that.
Have you seen When Time Ran Out? Come on now.
Exactly. Kind of wanted Dennis Hopper to be in this movie a bit more too, because he has such a tiny role in it.
Yeah.
What was that weird flashing light thingy that he has in his house that he's kind of playing with in that scene? I always wanted to know what that thing was.
I know, like that's the thing. He's like, oh, I don't know how to make it work, but I want to know, like, what's the point? All we know is that it's like a lame toy.
It's so weird. I just kind of like, I keep focusing. Maybe it's a problem. I just keep focusing on that part. Like, what is that thing? I just kind of then like, of course it's a blink and miss cameo because then he's like gone in the next scene.
Like, there's like a motif of weird neon in this movie. Because doesn't the first guy who we don't ever meet, but he's dead when she like is wearing the mink coat, he has a lot of weird neon shit in his apartment too.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, yeah. What says 1987 more than neon, right?
Exactly.
So neon. I love that about it. James Hong. I forgot to mention how he shows up in the movie as the private eye. I think you mentioned how he might meet a certain end in this movie. I like seeing him in the movie too. I think I always like seeing James Hong pop up and stuff, and he has a nice little role. And it definitely gets a good scene with Teresa Russell.
It's amazing when I was watching the credits how many crazy cameos they are. Diane Ladd has a small role. Mm-hmm. Mary Warnoff, who has a small role. I don't even remember who she plays. I haven't finished it yet.
She's the diving instructor.
Oh, that's right. So random.
That was a good. That's the way they have their meet cute. Their where Deborah Winger kind of is just goes diving while Teresa Russell's there, and they end up becoming diving partners.
These two would meet in a diving class run by Mary Warnoff. That's the only appropriate thing, it seems.
I mean, I want to be in a diving class run by Mary Warnoff. Please.
Totally.
Britannia Alda is in there.
That's right, yeah.
Lois Smith, Leo Rossi, again, always playing a jerk. And then David Mamet's there in the background somewhere.
Oh, I know.
This is a lot of people. This one, this love triangle that happens later in the movie. I just always liked that segment, although it does go on maybe a little bit too long. I thought maybe there could have been a little bit more tension in those parts. Maybe that's a minor grievance of the movie. I felt like that could have been resolved a little bit more, or just have a little bit more sense of danger. But other than that, I do dig that. And also maybe I'm not so like personally I don't see how this guy, maybe because he's foreign and he's rich. I don't know. I'm not so attracted to this French guy.
You don't see the appeal. I know what you mean. There's a little like over the top, smarmy, maybe. Like French dude cliche.
A little bit.
I know you were just saying something like that it could be more tense and like suspenseful. I think that's a thing in the whole movie. But that's one of the things I weirdly like about the movie. It's just like everyone's really relaxed. Like, yeah, I'm hunting this like cold-blooded Black Widow. I mean, it's cool. And like Teresa Russell's like, yeah, I might kill you, but we're friends. It's cool, whatever. Like it's just like it's very like it's a very low-key movie where everybody might be going to have sex with and or murder each other.
It's true. That's not that. It's a good. Comfortable is definitely a good word for it. I like that about it. There's definitely enough elements in the movie to keep me entertained and intrigued, even though it's not like a slam bang thriller. It's like I think definitely in the 90s, that's when thrillers really came into their own and became very pure pop entertainments, and especially the erotic thrillers as well. But I like that in the 80s, you could still get a kind of a relaxed thriller. I talked a little bit about The Bedroom Window in January. I thought that was a little too relaxed, and I was a little bit bored with that, but maybe because the focus was a little bit too much on the guy, and this one, the focus is on the two women. I thought the story was very interesting, and I just really like the dynamic definitely between these two women. And I do like Teresa Russell a lot. I think I could see why people say some of her delivery is flat, and it definitely is, and that's just kind of how she talks. I think. I mean, I feel like that's how she's been since I remember seeing her really early on in Straight Time, and. But I don't know, something about that is also kind of alluring to me. I don't know.
I totally agree.
I was trying to look up interviews with Teresa Russell, and a lot of things came up about Teresa Russell and her sex scenes. Clearly, she had a lot of sex scenes in movies.
But, that's so funny. Yeah, I don't think I've ever actually heard her speak about anything.
I'd be interested in, is she on that Blu-ray? I haven't picked up that Blu-ray, but I really would like to.
No, she's not. The European one has better extras than the Twilight Time one, and I think maybe a slightly better transfer too, but it's very similar to the Twilight Time one. It has an interview with the screenwriter and an interview with the son of the cinematographer, which is actually amazing because he goes in deep, just showing all these amazing cinematographic motifs in the movie that I never ever would have imagined. You watch it and it's beautiful, but it is so well thought out and clever. All the things that he does with color and light and camera angles, it's really amazing.
I mean, Conrad Hall was definitely a master, and his son has become a cinematographer in his own right. But I think he worked on a lot of his father's movies. And I'm not sure if he worked on. Did he work on Black Widow?
I think he did.
Okay, cool. I like that idea of the son kind of
cinematographer
passing the torch, and just
it's so nice.
Making movies beautiful again, because I miss beautiful movies like this. I guess it's easy to paint with a digital canvas, but I kind of like the old school way of making a movie beautiful by utilizing the camera and the techniques you can use with lighting, actual lighting. I just love that about it.
Black Widow is a prime example of a movie whose look could not be replicated digitally. It just couldn't be.
Yeah, it's kind of I wouldn't say a graininess, but there's something about it. It just feels like film, just I mean, it's like the epitome of film, movie on film to me. But it came through on the DVD, the rinky dink DVD I was watching. It was a double feature with The Vanishing. That's how I have it on DVD. the remake of The Vanishing. But the look of the movie really came through, and it's really beautiful. So I really need to upgrade to that Blu-ray, because I feel like that Blu-ray will definitely bring out some of more of that quality, the original quality of the movie when I saw it originally in the theater.
It does have that 35 millimeter grainy. It looks like a very well represented version of a 35 millimeter print, which is nice.
Yeah. All right. So Black Widow. Any further thoughts on Black Widow?
I don't think so. I think that's it. I might go downstairs and finish it as we speak. I need to go to sleep. I don't want to wake up early tomorrow. I just want to watch Black Widow. I need to be like Deborah Winger. I need somebody to follow around. I need to go to Hawaii. That's the moral of the Black Widow story for tonight.
Forgot to mention that this was kind of a box office hit. It made $25 million at the box office, which is nice. I mean, I feel
What was the budget?
I don't know. I couldn't find a budget for it. But I'd imagine it was a decently budgeted movie because of the location, especially shooting in Hawaii can't be cheap.
They were big-ish stars. I mean, Deborah Winger, I guess her time was a little bit past in the late 80s, but not totally.
Right. Well, we know. The one thing we didn't mention is that Deborah Winger had a reputation for working and being kind of difficult. Reading that Bob Rafelson interview, he actually mentioned that he described her as actually not difficult at all. That she definitely has a way of looking at her roles, and she has a specific way of working where she likes to be more spontaneous. Mm-hmm. And some actors don't like that. They like to be very prepared and just go off the script. Where she kind of likes to be more in the moment. She doesn't like to rehearse too much. And he said that it greatly reminded him of Jack Nicholson, who didn't like to over-rehearse as well. And I like that about it. And more kind words. Deborah Winger mentioned that she described the movie while she was filming it as a little bit like Bergman's Persona, which I think was interesting.
Yeah, you see that in the visuals, especially.
You could definitely see that. So, and then Betty Davis once said in an interview that she sees a lot of herself in Deborah Winger, which I thought was interesting.
Oh, I love that. That's actually really interesting because I see it too, even though they're very different. They have very different performance styles. Mm-hmm. There is some kind of essence that is there with both of them.
It's a very strong will, I would say, between the two of them, and that's of course what hurt Deborah Winger's career, of having such a strong will and fighting for what she believed in. And of course, women, of course, were up against it in Hollywood, and especially this time period, because studios were just becoming more like factories and didn't care as much about directors like Bob Rafelson. 87 definitely still had those films, but this is the point where things were definitely changing a bit, and actors like Deborah Winger didn't really have a chance because they were women in Hollywood and they were getting older. So I'm glad this movie was. I'm glad Bob was able to make the movie he wanted.
I feel like it must have been, maybe because it was a hit in the theater too, it was like ubiquitous on video. Like every video store had it. Every like supermarket was like selling it. Like I remember they had it for sale at like BJ's and like Sam's Club for like decades. I don't know why. I remember seeing it all the time. And I love the cover too, with their faces on each side and then like the tall apartment doors and a man coming into the room. Very alluring. That's one of those scenes I wish had happened in a movie, like the man coming into the big apartment with the tall door and a danger awaiting him.
I just that video box I always associate it with 1987. I just remember that there was always a few copies of that at the video store, which was nice. Nice to know that.
If you want to rent it and you don't have to be checked out.
Exactly. All right, that's Black Widow, and Deborah Winger's returning to the big screen this year. In a movie called The Lovers. I
didn't know that. That's so exciting.
From A24. Yeah, they're actually she's returning as a romantic lead in a movie. Who would have thought?
That is amazing. As a lead, who's her opposite?
Tracy Letts plays her husband. It's about a couple who are kind of on the brink of divorce, and they kind of suddenly find that they're attracted to each other again, which is nice. A movie about just something just simple as that. I think that's pretty amazing.
That is one I will be there to see it in the theater. Like I'll buy, like if Jason and I go, I'll buy 4 tickets just for Deborah.
There's still hope 30 years later that they can crank out good movies. Yay!
Yes, there's still hope, a little bit.
Thank you for joining me, Ben. And,
Thank you. It's a pleasure. I look forward to popping up again as the year 1987 progresses.
Definitely. I'm sure we have a lot to talk about then.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Well.
Bye, everyone.
Talk soon. Take care. That was a lot of fun. Thank you, Ben, again, for joining me for that one. Now I'm going to get into another movie that was released on February 6th, going in kind of the order they were released, like we did in January. Here it is. Here's a TV spot.
She should have known.
Oh, God, help!
Not to talk to strangers.
Please.
Not to get in their cars.
They're gonna kill me.
Not to sleep in their beds. Especially in the dead
Please don't go.
of winter. Dead of Winter. Rated R.
Okay, Black Widow. Going through these weeks just brings me back. I saw this the same week as Black Widow, so they came out the same week, and I just remember them being close together, kind of lumping them together because they're like thrillers, noirs set around women. A female protagonist in this case, it's Mary Steenburgen as an actress who kind of is lured to this remote house and very snowy atmosphere in Canada for I think what she thinks is a screen test to get in a movie, but turns out to be a much more sinister plot. And Mary Steenburgen is a very likable presence in movies. She's very likable in this movie, so you're side with her from the beginning. You want to see her just get out of the scrape. She's lured by Roddy McDowell, who's also someone who's very, always sympathetic in films. You like him. someone who's comes across as a genuinely nice person, and this movie comes across as nice and also very creepy, and it's a good mix of the two. Jan Rubes, he is the doctor that she's auditioning for, as it turns out, and more too. I won't get into the spoiler territory, but yes, there's a lot going on that she is not aware of, and that she'll find out soon. Mary Steenburgen plays 3 roles in this movie, and she pulls them off, all 3 of them, really well. I think, in a way, she's pretty underrated. Now, she got some acclaim in the 80s with Oscar nominations and good reviews, but I feel like, time is not always the kindest to certain actors, and I think she's been kind of taken for granted for maybe quite a few years now, and I think she definitely had her moment in the 80s, and she's really good in this film. I just wish it was more of a hit. I wish more people had seen it, so she would have had maybe a bigger career after this. She got the Back to the Future 3 movie not long after this, a couple years after this. Good for her. I'm glad she showed up in that, even if it's not my favorite sequel in the world, but she's fun in that. She's just, like I was watching recently Time After Time, that sci-fi thriller with Roddy McDowell. I'm sorry, with Malcolm McDowell, the other McDowell. And that was a great film, great romance too. And I love that movie, and she's good in that movie. She's a lot of spunk in that movie. Kind of very different character than this movie. She's very versatile. It's kind of surprising. And she was always fun to watch on Curb Your Enthusiasm when she popped up and stuff like that. Always liked her. Yeah, it's only made like $2.4 million at the box office. I saw it in the theater, like I said, the week it came out, and it was at the Lowe's Oriental Theater, which is a big theater and kind of grand, and it just kind of added to the atmosphere. It was in winter, New York. February, New York is not the most pleasant, and this movie also had a very snowed in kind of feel. So kind of the atmosphere while watching the film and going outside just kind of really adds to it. And it's directed by Arthur Penn, who kind of stepped in to replace an original director who started filming, and they needed some help. And Arthur Penn does a great job. There's a lot of unusual camera angles and shots in this movie that I thought was very interesting and kind of stood out to me, like as a thriller, a noir that was kind of trying to be classy, but also a little bit more. Critics weren't always so kind to this movie. I think some critics liked it, but they kind of didn't quite get what they were going for. Thought it was a bit too reserved, but I thought it was really well done myself. And I have the Blu-ray that came out by Scream Factory. It's a good Blu-ray with a really good interview with Mary Steenburgen. So I recommend that if you like solid thrillers and noirs. And I think this was a good one. And just make sure you keep all your fingers while watching. I won't say any more than that. So yeah, Dead of Winter. Love it. And let's move on to a movie that I don't love. Here's a TV spot.
Stormy Weathers is a young attorney with a growing reputation.
Shouldn't we try to win? You can't win, son, trust me. I hit people all the time, I know.
For getting anyone off by putting everyone on.
Your Honor, please! Don't look at me, it ain't mine.
Judd Nelson, Elizabeth Perkins, John Hurt. From the Hip, rated PG.
Starts tomorrow at selected theaters near you.
If only you could see the eyes rolling in the back of my head when that trailer played. Stormy Weathers. That's right, Judd Nelson plays Stormy Weathers. God. Here's a plot summary. Someone wrote on IMDb. I'm too lazy to, write one myself because this movie is kind of lazy. Apprentice lawyer Robin Stormy Weathers turns a civil suit into a headline-grabbing charade. He must re-examine his scruples after his shenanigans with him a promotion in his firm and he must now defend a college professor who is apparently guilty of murder. From the Hip is a movie written by David E. Kelly, who writes like only movies about lawyers, I guess, most of the time. He did Ally McBeal. They were lawyers, I guess, right? Boston Legal, Harry's Law. God, looking at his credits. The Practice. Jesus. He also wrote Lake Placid, which was kind of fun. And did LA Law, blah, 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 blah. And I guess this is supposed to be a comedy. It's maybe one of the unfunniest comedies of the year. I didn't laugh in this movie really at all. It's also pretty boring. It's a really boring courtroom movie. So I'm not sure what they were going for. It's directed by Bob Clark. Sadly, directed by Bob Clark, who left us 10 years ago now. Gosh, it's been that long. He made some great movies, as we know, like Black Christmas and Death Dream and Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things. His early films, to me, are great. Christmas Story, of course. Porky's. But then he made Rhinestone and Turk 182, which has its fans. I was one of those people who liked it when I was a kid, but I'm afraid to revisit it because I have a feeling it's not going to hold up. And From the Hip, 3 in a row. Loose Cannons, It Runs in the Family, Baby Geniuses, not so good role there. But getting back to From the Hip, gosh, don't watch this movie. It's not fun. It's Judd Nelson, and he was the bad boy in his previous couple of films with Breakfast Club and St. Elmo's Fire, and here he gets to play kind of the wacky lawyer, and that's not fun. Elizabeth Perkins is totally wasted in this movie. I don't even remember her in the movie. She was in the movie apparently. John Hurt, great actor, totally wasted. Darren McGavin, another great actor. Lots of good actors in this movie. Nancy Marchand from Sopranos, she's great, but she was wasted in the movie. Ray Walston was wasted in the movie. Sigh. Just don't see From the Hip. It has a terrible cover artwork with Judd Nelson in a suit, with a dog bone in his mouth, looking at it. I just want to hurt it. I want to hurt the photo. Is that possible? Can I hurt an image on a computer screen? I don't want to hurt my computer. I just want to hurt this artwork. Oh, it's so bad. But I'm glad I won't have to watch From the Hip again because I really don't want to. It's not fun. That's all I have to say about that. Let's move on to our next one.
You got real family loyalty.
Michael J. Fox is Joe Raznick.
Do what you want with your life. But Benji ain't just yours. He's mine, and he's Mom and Dad's, and he's his own, too.
He's trying to help his family.
Maybe it'll bring us all close together.
But he's got a dream of his own. He's taking it all the way to the light of day. Michael J. Fox, Jenna Rowland, Joan Jett, Light of Day. Rated PG-13.
Starts tomorrow at selected theaters near you.
Okay, this is a tough one for me because I sort of liked this movie when it came out. I saw it in the theater and I liked it. It was I saw it at the Marlboro Theater. It was up the block from me, and so I was just going up and enjoying it and liking Michael J. Fox, and I always liked Joan Jett, of course. The Runaway is always fun. She's very charismatic, so I could just totally see her making the transition to film. But the movie kind of lets her down a bit, and I think mainly because, I hate to say it because it's the cliche to say this, especially with the roles he was doing around this time period where he was starting to get serious as an actor. Michael J. Fox is definitely miscast in this movie as the brother of Joan Jett. They're in a band together, and of course the trials and tribulations of the band as they're trying to make it in Cleveland, and she has a kid, and her brother is kind of like becomes the surrogate dad to the kid, And they have issues with their mom, played by Jenna Rollins, and she's great, of course. But the movie kind of lets some of the actors down. It just wants to be gritty and real, but then you have Michael J. Fox in a role who's so synonymous with Back to the Future and another fun '87 movie, Secret of My Success. We'll get to that one in the spring, and I don't know. In Family Ties, of course, yes. So going from Family Ties to like playing a rocker in Cleveland who's got a lot of attitude and trying to be this dad figure too. I don't know, just kind of heavy-handed and not fun. The musical sequences are pretty good, and I wanted them to be a bit more dynamic. I don't know. I wonder how much of it that is that Michael J. Fox's presence kind of distracts me from the film. Maybe if it was Joan Jett and someone else I don't know, like Bruce Springsteen or someone who was actually like a pop star at the time, instead of an actor who's so synonymous with a role. I don't know, I just couldn't get into it this viewing, and I feel like the movie gets really maudlin in parts, like especially later on when it becomes kind of a disease movie of the week. I think it's been described as before, and yeah, it becomes kind of that. And I really like Paul Schrader's stuff. He puts a lot of heart and soul into his stuff, and he likes to go to gritty and edgy places, and he definitely did that in a lot of his previous films. But Latter Day seems like a compromised film. I'm not sure what he thinks of it, but I just couldn't get a lot of joy out of it this viewing. So conflicted, because I know there's some good stuff there. Oh well. Light of Day, starring Michael J. Fox and Joan Jett and Jenna Rollins. Here is our next film.
84 Charing Cross Road, London, England. Gentlemen, your ad says that you specialize in out-of-print books. I require a book of love poems with spring coming on. Yours, Elaine Hanf.
Dear Miss Hanf, we are sending by book post today a little book which I hope you will like. Yours faithfully, FPD, Marks & Co.
Please don't let Frank know I'm writing this.
If you're curious about Frank, which you are, he's in his late 30s. Quite nice looking.
Very nice, in fact.
Certainly.
Poor Frank. I give him such a hard time.
What do you do with yourself all day? Sit in the back of the store and read?
I keep trying to puncture that proper British reserve. Imagine a whole country says Gosford. I'll probably walk in there one day without telling them who I am. Frank, you still there? You're the only soul alive who understands me.
Their love for words became a love for each other. 84 Charing Cross Road.
Love, Frank.
A true story based on a bestseller.
Okay, before we get into 84 Charing Cross Road, there were a couple of more February 6 movies that skipped over. Lady Jane, I tried to track that one down. I couldn't find a copy of that one. I don't remember that one too well. One Woman or Two, the Sigourney Weaver, Gerard Depardieu French film. I couldn't find a copy of that at all. I think Lady Jane is definitely more available. I just wasn't available to watch it this time. But I definitely want to see One Woman or Two. I love Sigourney Weaver, and wish I had checked that out a while ago. Scorpion I watched as an action movie, kind of a Chuck Norris-like dude who fights and kicks butt. He has a mustache. He wears the shortest shorts ever. And just beats up a lot of dudes. It's a very simple movie. So I just remember seeing it when it came out. It was at the Walker, and I would go to the Walker all the time. I'll talk about the Walker a little bit later. There's a lot of movies I've seen at the Walker. And that theater played a lot of, sometimes would play these little movies like Scorpion that didn't get a big release. So I would go to that theater to check out some of these movies. And I'm not a big kung fu action karate guy. And so Scorpion is kind of forgettable for me, but yeah, watch it if you want to see a mustachioed hero in short shorts kick some butt. If that's your thrill, check it out. On February 11th, The Good Father was released. That starred Anthony Hopkins, which is a good segue to 84 Charing Cross Road, which also stars Anthony Hopkins. And of course, Anne Bancroft in the lead. Now, story-wise, it's basically the true story of a transatlantic business correspondence about used books that develop into a close friendship spanning 20 years. This woman writes to this guy who runs this bookshop in England, and they have rare books that she wants, and she's in New York. And she writes like manuscripts or writes screenplays, I think, or something like that. And they kind of developed this relationship, and via correspondence, actually writing letters, what people used to do. They weren't emailing yet. And the movie kind of traces that relationship and the effect it has on the people who work at the bookshop and stuff, how it affects her personal life. And it's like a very kind of prim and proper movie, you could say. Almost a movie about manners and well acted, well performed by Anne Bancroft and Anthony Hopkins and everybody else in the movie, Mercedes Ruehl and Judi Dench, a lot of like older British character actors, and I liked it. I definitely liked it, and just not a movie that has a high body count. So if you're in the mood to like just watch something a bit slower paced and but has good emphasis on relationships and how they form in unusual ways and how people can affect each other, it's kind of a good movie to see. But it's not a movie you're going to throw on just like, yeah, time to watch 84 Charing Cross Road, yeah! No. Definitely not that. But I definitely liked it, and I appreciated it. It was a movie that was, or a story that was kind of translated into different ways, but it was based on a book, it was a play, it was a BBC radio show, I think Gillian Anderson was in that one. So it's been translated different ways, and because the story is interesting and it's can kind of cross over to different media, and it's pretty cool. Also, Mel Brooks, who was married to Anne Bancroft until she died, sadly. He had bought the rights to the story for her. And that was like a present for her. And he produced the film for her. It's kind of lovely, right? How many of us can say that? I'm going to buy the rights of a movie so you could be in it. It's pretty nice. Also on February 13th, Duet for One, Faces of Women. Not going to get into those, but I'm going to get into the TV spot for next one quickly, because we have a big show. We have a big title coming up later, and I want to get to that soon. So here is the TV spot for this one.
Jonathan Switcher loved talking to his work.
What? I never thought they'd hire anyone stranger than me. Don't you like your new scarf?
But he never expected it
Not especially.
to talk back.
You're the only one who can see me like this.
Now his life's heading
Let's go have some fun.
in a different direction.
You are one sick puppy.
Andrew McCarthy, Kim Cattrall,
Look at him with the dummy.
Who are you to criticize?
Mannequin.
You know I would never bother you when you're kissing a piece of wood.
Rated PG. Coming to life Friday at theaters everywhere.
Oh, Mannequin. I love you, Mannequin. I've talked about Mannequin before in the show, so I'll be brief. What to say about Mannequin that I haven't said before? It hits all the right spots for me. It's very nostalgic for this movie because I watched it a lot as a kid with my sister, but it just it still holds up. It's entertaining. It's fun. It's funny. It's a screwball farce comedy. It's a romance. It's got a lot of actors have a lot of chemistry with each other. All of the actors. It's got James Spader playing a villain. I mean, what more do you want? I mean, it's got a mannequin in it that comes to life. And she does store windows. I mean, she makes store windows. She makes displays with her creative. She's the muse for this artist type who gets stuck in ordinary jobs, and he creates this mannequin, and she comes to life for him because she loves him. She loves the way he thinks and the way he creates, and they create together. It's about creative minds coming together, and the evil people who can't see in creative ways, who try to stop them because they're jealous of what they can conjure up together. And you get the help of Hollywood Montrose, one of cinema's best characters. I don't know. I know it's controversial, some of that, but I love Hollywood Montrose because I too can relate to the jelly donuts calling out to me in the middle of the night. I hear you, Hollywood. I feel your pain. I know exactly what you're going through. Mannequin was a huge hit, and I think up to this point, a lot of these movies have done okay. Black Widow was a pretty big hit. Everything else, not so much. Mannequin made $42 million at the box office, so it was huge. Of course, it spawned a sequel. And I wish there were like 10 Mannequin movies. I'd watch all of them back to back. The first one is a super charming movie, and you can see why it's something that's kind of lasted over the years. It's on Blu-ray now from Olive Films. I have both Mannequin 1 and Mannequin 2 on Blu-ray. Very happy to own those two. It was a Gladden film, and short-lived Gladden. They had a deal with 20th Century Fox. They put it out, and you know what? It's a movie that I'm gonna continue to watch over and over. I never get tired of it. So there's that. Let's get right into it. Funny enough, I saw these two movies as a double feature. Here is the second one.
It's not for the money.
What are the odds on Lincoln Hawk? 20-1, pal. Real long shot.
It's not for the glory.
You ain't got a prayer in Vegas.
It's for the love of his son.
All I care about is you. You're my boy. You want it?
Sylvester Stallone. Over the top.
I wish you could meet me halfway, like Sylvester Stallone does in Over the Top. Wow, what a double feature that was. I saw these both at the wonderful Walker Theater. When I remember the Walker, I remember seeing these two together because they stood out because they're such a weird double feature, right? Over the Top and Mannequin. And very different movies, but both of them glorious in their own ways. Over the Top is the best movie there is about arm wrestling. Okay, yes, it's the only movie, but it's amazing. It's wonderful. It was directed by Mahanam Golan. Now, Golan, Globus, Cannon, wonderful. You can't get a better combination than that with Sylvester Stallone, right? It's going to be kind of very glossy, filled with montages and songs and just a lot of like machismo and like a lot of deep feelings, bubbling with the kid who loves his dad, or just just trying to bond with his dad and just trying to come to terms with their relationship with each other. And Sylvester Stallone, kind of this brooding truck driver who just I want to win back my son by arm wrestling dudes. That's what better way to bond with your son, right? And the movie just is an original. Got to tell you that. Robert Loggia's in there, Susan Blakely, and it just always entertained me. It's not okay. It's not a good movie, but it's a really fun movie. For what it is. Is that okay? That's okay, right? Great music, very memorable. music in this movie. Just remember, this whole movie just makes me think of like the magic hour and like montages. I feel like that's the whole movie, is like magic hour and montages, you know? Mind over matter. Got Robin Zander, Frank Stallone, Asia. Got a lot of all the hits. Eddie Money, Kenny Loggins at the Meet Me Halfway, very memorable. Sammy Hagar, and Georgia Moroder, of course. The music is memorable. The movie is memorable. Didn't catch fire at the box office for some reason. Not sure why. I mean, I feel like it's, action movies, action fans' alley. Is it, or is it not? Maybe. They maybe don't want to see a movie about Stallone, a PG movie with Stallone and arm wrestling and his kid, but it's got some good action stuff in it, right? It's kind of like Rocky light. Nothing wrong with that. $16 million on a $25 million budget, so yeah, kind of a bomb for Canon, and maybe a sign that Canon might not go over the top as a company. But you know what? I still love you, Canon. You tried. You tried to make a hit about arm wrestling, and you know what? We love you for it. So I'm raising my glass of scotch to you. Thank you, Canon. All right, so that was 213. Going on to 220. Alien Predators, which I wanted to see. I saw it at the Fort Way as a double feature with Peggy Sue Got Married, another weird friggin' double feature. And I don't remember Alien Predators, but I do remember Peggy Sue Got Married. So I kind of need to catch up with that one. Kieran Edwards, who co-hosts this podcast once in a while, he recommends Alien Predators. And so I know I saw it in theaters. Just can't remember it. Another movie called Billy Gavin came out. And Eat and Run. And The Good Wife. I'm not going to cover those. But those also came out 220. There's a couple of 220 movies I'm going to get to before we get into the big one. Here is the first one. Here's a TV spot.
This is a land where foreign policy has no rules.
We'll do this one by the book, Sergeant.
And warfare has no limits. But now Marine Sergeant Jack Burns will teach the enemy the proper use of diplomacy, the importance of restraint, and the power of negotiation. Fred Dreyer, Death Before Dishonor.
Opening soon at a Cineplex Odeon Theater near you.
Okay, that's Death Before Dishonor, starring Fred Dreyer of... You remember Fred Dreyer? I like Fred Dreyer, but yeah, of his TV show, and Hunter, sorry. God, I didn't say Hunter, it must be the Scotch talking. I saw this in the theater, and I liked it. I remember liking it. I remember liking it on video. Like, it was released by New World. And I revisited it recently, and I was totally bored by it. I don't know what happened since then. I just thought it was really boring. It just didn't excite me as an action movie. And I feel like it was a lot of, like, dudes talking, and then, like, some action, and then more dudes talking, and then, like... terrorists and talking, and I don't know, it kind of lost me. Gunnery Sergeant Burns reports for duty to an American embassy in the Middle East. However, due to enlightened views of the ambassador, the Marine Security Detachment is in charge of his... Oh my god, I'm not even going to finish it. It's boring. I'm bored reading that. Just like Fred Dreyer, military guy, and like bad dudes, and like stuff might happen to his like platoon type group of kids, and they might be hell to pay. I liked Hunter. Hunter was fun, and Fred Dreyer is really charismatic in Hunter, but I don't know, it's kind of lost here. Don't know what happened there. Anywho, here is the other February 27th movie. There's no trailer for it at all. I don't know why. It's called Square Dance. Do you remember Square Dance? I feel like that's a movie that a lot of people checked out at the video store because, it's a cover with Winona Ryder on it, and by this point in the 80s, she was starting to star in her hits, like Beetlejuice came up after this, and then Heathers, and people took a lot of notice of her. And here she's a 13-year-old girl who lives with her grandpa in the country, and she has for many years. And then one day her mom shows up and wants to take her to the big bad city. And her mom's married to some guy and can now provide for her where she couldn't before, so that's why she lived with her grandfather. And then at some point she goes with her mom to the city, and some trouble happens. And as you do, you do get into trouble when you go to the big bad city. She meets a mentally disabled boy played by Rob Lowe, and they kind of strike up a relationship that might lead to some trouble. Jason Robards is the grandpa. Jane Alexander is the mom. Good cast. I don't know. I like this movie. I did like it, but it's a little slow. It's a little slow moving. So you have to be in the right mindset for this kind of movie. I thought it was charming. I thought it was well performed. And they all did a good job. It was directed by Daniel Petrie, who did like a lot of movies. And I liked him as a director. He was kind of all over the place though. He did TV and films. Another movie around this time, Rocket Gibraltar, Cocoon sequel, did that. And a few other things that kind of I'm trying to remember now. Fort Apache the Bronx, he did that, which is very different from the Six Pack, which was fun with Kenny Rogers. Kenny Loggins and Six Pack. Kenny Loggins and Kenny Rogers together. That'd be amazing. He did Lifeguard from the 70s. That was a pretty good movie. So I liked it. It's just, you gotta kind of be in the mood for like a very slow-moving movie set in a farm, and then like, cause the city stuff doesn't come till later, and it's not really city, it's like, it's basically a play in this movie, like people talking in a room and kind of connecting, and so if you're in a mood for that kind of movie, and want an early performance by Winona Ryder, who's very good in the film, and I think she definitely you can see the star kind of coming out there in this film. It made like no money at the box office, probably why there was no trailer. Couldn't find a trailer. $225,000, released by Island Pictures, so a very small company trying to pick up like smaller films, and played at the Plaza Theater on 58th Street. I remember that. Golden Globe nomination for Rob Lowe. Interesting. I didn't think he was. I think he was okay in the movie. I didn't think it was like something completely special, but he did get a nomination, which is cool. But yeah, Square Dance. I'm glad I revisited it because it's been a while, and it's one of those movies that I remember checking out, of course, and just been that long. It's been like 30 years since I've seen it, so. Kind of have to refresh your memory after a while. Okay, so that's it for February 20th. We're going to get into February 27th in a moment. Before we do that, I think I need to take a musical break. Here it is.
How's about coming back to my room for a little boom boom?
Oh man, I guarantee you, those of you who grew up in the 80s like I did haven't heard that song in a while. That's right, boom boom. Oh my goodness, breaking out all the stops in 1987. I had a choice. I was gonna go with that or like a slow jam, and I kind of wanted to go for the slow jam, but then I'm like, I don't know, it's not very exciting, is it? Yeah, that one's not too slow. So we're getting into February 27th territory now, and the first one, gosh, it's not good. There's a trailer for it, but it's really long, so I'm gonna spare you that because it's a very long trailer. It's a not very good movie, and that's Beyond Therapy. And it's that movie that's basically a date between Julie Haggerty and Jeff Goldblum. Kind of this like wacky couple who get together on a date, and then like all sorts of zany things happen while they go on a date. And I just didn't enjoy this movie at all. I wanted to. I saw it back in the day, and I didn't see it in the theater. I rented it on video. It was a New World video, so I had to watch it. And no. I liked it then, I guess, more. I don't know. I always thought it was a little strange and out there. But now it's really kind of annoying. I know some people have that problem with some Robert Altman movies. I love Robert Altman myself, generally. This one's a total misfire for me. It just doesn't do anything for me at all. It kind of grates. Robert Altman's style of like characters talking over each other and like a lot of things happening in the frame and characters going in and out. It just doesn't work for me in this context. I generally like Jeff Goldblum and Julie Haggerty, but they're not very likable in this movie. Strangely, two likable actors, not very likable together. No chemistry. There's a lot of good people in the movie. It's it doesn't work at all. It was kind of, I don't want to watch this anymore. Christopher Durang wrote the screenplay based on this play, and he's a well-known playwright. Sometimes plays don't translate well to the screen. This might be an example of that. Sorry. I'm sure it has its fans, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, I'm going to move on from that quickly because we're going to get to that big title soon. Judgment in Stone, aka The Housekeeper. I have that on video. It's a good film. I need to revisit it again. I have it on video as The Housekeeper, excuse me. And so I'm not going to get to that today. I would manage to revisit a couple of action-y movies. Number One with a Bullet, which I saw on VHS when that came out in the 80s. It was a Cannon movie. It was a lot of fun. I just need to... I didn't finish it. I didn't finish the rewatch, so I need to finish that rewatch so I could properly evaluate it. Robert Carradine is in it, and Billy D. Williams. Kind of a buddy cop movie. Rage of Honor with Sho Kosugi is I started watching it. It's enjoyable for what it is. I just didn't finish it either. I just wasn't in the mood for like that kind of movie. So I'm not gonna go into it further here. And then we have three other titles left, and I'm going to get into the big one that we hinted at earlier. And my friend Andrew was kind enough to join me on this one. So here it is. No further wait.
It's 1987. Do you know where Freddy is? no waking up from this nightmare. A Nightmare on Elm Street, Part 3, Dream Warriors, rated R.
Now showing at a theater near you.
Okay, so that was the TV spot for A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors. Now, with me today is a good friend of mine who's actually also a film critic, Andrew Parker. Thank you for joining me, Andrew.
Great to be here. I'm a big fan of what you're trying to do here. So, and any chance I get to talk about Nightmare on Elm Street is always a great occasion in my book.
So, Andrew, tell us a little bit about what you do in your world up in Toronto.
I am a film critic up in Toronto. I write for Toronto Film Scene, The Globe and Mail, and thegate.ca. You can find all of my reviews there. I've also worked for the better part of the past few years documenting the history of the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise for a book that is yet to be released.
So you're pretty much... I've thought about this movie, Nightmare on Elm Street 3, which I've always enjoyed since it came out in '87, and I'm like, who else could I talk to about this movie? Who loves the Elm Street series even more than I do? And I immediately thought of you because, like you said, you literally wrote the book on the series, and that's pretty amazing. What's the experience like writing in the book?
It's been the process of writing the book was pretty easy. The process of getting the book out there to people has been increasingly difficult for a variety of reasons. But putting it together was a lot of fun. It's one of the most fulfilling things I've ever done, and it's also something that continually evolves. I'm almost glad that I've had more time to work on it because there's always something that's coming up or something new that's being found. Like a lot of the films in the franchise, there were so many alternate cuts and so many alternate scenes and so many different takes and so many different scripts, so many different treatments that every day it seems like someone stumbles across a new piece of treasure that hasn't previously been sifted through, which I think is really fun. And you get a sense of just how invested New Line Cinema was in this franchise and how much it meant to them and how much work they put into it, that we're still... I mean, we're not talking about an archaeological dig. We're talking about a film franchise that's pushing 40. So it's not really the biggest thing in the world, but it's always so interesting to see what's coming out, and it's always I think one of the things that made me gravitate towards it in the first place is it's one of the most consistently interesting film franchises to talk about. And I'll freely admit that I don't really love every film in the franchise. I like them all to varying degrees. But I if someone ever asks me, I definitely say that Dream Warriors is my favorite of the franchise.
Of the entire franchise?
Yeah, definitely of the entire franchise.
I was always a fan of the series. I saw the first, actually all 7 films in the theater when they were first run. Thinking about it now, sometimes I'm trying to remember because I know I didn't see every single Friday the 13th in the theater and every single Halloween Halloween movie in the theater, but for sure every single Nightmare on Elm Street film in a theater when it first came out, and it was a big deal for me. It was kind of a rite of passage of growing up in the 80s. You had to go see the new Freddy movie, and luckily 1987 didn't have a Michael Myers movie and didn't have a Jason movie, so you had Freddy, thankfully, to save 1987.
Which I always thought that was so amusing that was the year that there was a Nightmare on Elm Street film, but there wasn't one of the other films, because after Freddy's Revenge, the Nightmare series took a year off to sort of regroup. So the previous year there was no Freddy, but now in '87, he's the only game in town, and he came back bigger and better than ever. One of the things that you were saying that I thought was kind of interesting is I was actually too young to see. Well, I was still technically too young to see Freddy's Dead, but Freddy's Dead was the first one that I got to see in the theater. And I was too young to really go out and see things because I was still a young buck in the 80s. But to give you an idea of what sort of crafted my filmmaking tastes, I remember vividly seeing the first film on HBO at 3 a.m. while I was homesick. I got up in the middle of the night and I just kind of wandered in the living room. My dad was watching A Nightmare on Elm Street. I was just kind of captivated by it. And I asked my dad if I could watch it. He was like, well, you're not going to get any sicker. So I just stayed up and I watched it. And I remember at the time, it was probably because I was feeling miserable at the time because I had like a huge fever. And maybe like for some reason the flame like imagery was like cooling me off somehow. But I didn't think it was that scary. I thought it was really interesting. I thought it was really entertaining. And it wasn't until I saw the first one again, maybe 10 years later, in like a friend's basement with a bunch of like overly hyperactive and giddy teenagers like freaking out at everything, that I was like, wow, this really has a real impact to it. And with Nightmare 3, I saw it probably the worst way possible, which was on WLVI TV 56 out of Boston. In the middle of the afternoon in like a heavily edited version. So I was basically watching it on the CW with like everything bleeped out at 2 p.m. in like the late 80s. But I still thought it was supremely entertaining.
I remember all the, I feel like part 3 for sure of the sequels got heavy rotation on it was a WPIX Channel 11 in New York City. And I just remember that being on pretty often, and heavily cut form, so it wasn't anywhere near as fun. But you still got, still some of the, of course, the imagery and the fun of it still came through because by its nature, it's a fun movie. You didn't get the blood and guts of the Elm Street series on TV, of course. But it was,
I saw part 5 on WPIX at like 3 a.m. one day, and I went to sleep early so I could wake up early at 3 a.m.
Oh, wow.
To watch that one on WPIX. So, we got that there, too. We got PIX and WOR back when I was growing up. So a lot of this stuff would air on those stations, too, like often in the middle of the night.
I remember, because I went to see, I think I've mentioned this on the podcast before, I went to see Nightmare on Elm Street 3 Dream Warriors in the theater. I convinced my rock band cousin to take me and my younger sister, who was like, so this is 1987, so I was 10, I was 12, sorry, and my sister was around 10, so we got to see this movie, pretty young age, in a theater, and it was a packed audience. It was at the Loews Oriental, which is a big old movie palace in New York City, and it's seen better days, of course, because it was an old movie palace, and a lot of those movie palaces were pretty amazing and beautiful. So it was slightly run down, but it was still pretty majestic, if you will. And it was in that main auditorium, which was really big, and just seeing in that theater with a packed audience, and just left a real big impression on me. I mean, I just thought, this is pretty. I'm sure my cousin wanted to see it too because he's in a rock band, and of course we know famously Dokken did the music, did a couple of songs for the movie, and he was a big fan of Dokken. So it didn't take much for me to talk him into going to see it. Like Dokken did it, or Dokken's in at least the music video for it, and
you'll have to wait till VHS to get the full Dokken effect.
Exactly. So he was into seeing it, and we all really enjoyed it. It was it was a complete blast, of course. And then of course it came out on video. A lot of the Elm Street movies were released on media, home entertainment, and I'm pretty sure this is one of the early Elm Street movies that I bought. Was first one and the third one. And the fourth one for sure. That when that came out, I managed to find a copy of that pretty quickly, and then the second one was probably around after that, and then the fifth one, and then the sixth one. I think I got the box set at some point, so I had to own part 6.
You really needed to own that one.
You really needed to own that one. So you would rank Nightmare 3 as your favorite of the films. I would put it a little bit lower because I've always been a fan of the first one, big fan of the first one, and then I love 3 and 4. So I'm not sure where they rank. I mean, I've always had a strange affinity to Part 4, and you were telling me recently that we were just talking about it actually, that how Robert Englund might feel the same, that he kind of prefers Part 4 over Part 3. What were you saying?
Yeah, I remember Robert Englund once described Part 4 as probably the perfect pizza and beer movie when I talked to him about the differences between sort of 3 and 4, because there's a bit of overlap between the characters, and he just always thought that 4 was a more, like, sort of entertaining bit of, like, sort of grotesquerie, I guess you could say, but I never felt the same way about it. And I think the difference for me between 3 and 4 is that 4 feels at times like it's trying too hard to be goofy. Mm-hmm. And I think in 3, it sort of more naturally shows that dreams can be sort of irrational and goofy and silly at times, but then become scary. And I think with Part 4, there was nothing in that movie that remotely scared me. I think there's some clever things that they do, like in terms of particularly what they do to all the recurring characters in pretty quick succession, like right off the top. And I think that's a cool decision, but I think it also sort of hampered the rest of the movie because it felt like I was just plunked into a movie that's like only half of a movie.
Right.
Like, and I just never felt like it was like a whole movie. Like, I somehow felt like, despite it being somewhat arguably the best film in the series, but I would actually say that the much maligned Dream Child is the best looking film in the franchise. I just never gravitated towards sort of the goofy humor of it. It just never hit a sweet spot for me. It felt like it was just too much. Like, when we talk about the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, and invariably the point of discussion will come around to, well, when did Freddy start to become a joke? And I think the seeds are planted in 3, definitely, for him to sort of become that joke. But I think in Part 4 and in Freddy's Dead in particular, in those 2 movies in particular, it is taken to sort of a ludicrous extreme. Part 5 treats him a bit like a joke, but Part 5, it's so weird because there's some restraint in some sections of it, and others it's a bit over the top, but I always thought that 5 it had the darkness that 4 was missing.
Right.
Like, and I think that's for me, is like there needs to be some sort of sense of darkness, and in Part 4 I just didn't feel as invested. I mean, what can you really say about a franchise that trades Dawkins for the Fat Boys in the very next film? So, and I think that's kind of one of the things I always go to. I'm like, it ends with the Fat Boys, guys.
Getting back to 3, I had similar issues with 3 where because I love the characters so much, and then they built them up so grandly in Part 3, and then they die kind of quickly off once they start inheriting their powers. I feel like that to me is a little bit of where the movie kind of doesn't work as much. I kind of wanted them to exploit their powers a bit more, because this is the Dream Warriors, right? It's right in the title, and I want them to, really go after Freddy, but they don't really get a chance to. Really, it's really our lead character who kind of has to battle Freddy at the end, which is the idea of a slasher movie. It's
Craig Wasson, our lead character, Craig Wasson.
He has more to do than the teenagers do in the movie, which is kind of strange.
So weird because he's like so useless. He is so useless in this movie. He like just sort of bumbles through the whole thing. Like he's basically playing his character for Body Double again.
Yeah, it's funny because he's good at that. He's good at playing that kind of bumbly character.
Oh yeah, he's right.
Like, you kind of believe him as like this guy who's probably a professor of some kind or a doctor, and just kind of finds himself in these crazy situations. And I like him a lot. I just think it was kind of strange that it was up to him, and it was up to Kristen, but not any, not anyone else. The kind of the Dream Warriors, if you will, was kind of almost like just a way to get people into the movie, but they don't really exploit them as much as they should have. Yep.
The one thing that I will give credit to, that something that you touched on there, is it definitely set the template for the franchise that would follow it. Because in the first film and in the second film, Freddy didn't really cater or change the nightmares that these kids found themselves in to their personalities. And I think what helps in 3 with that sort of like body count that you speak of, with all of these other side characters who have these special powers, is he finds ways to get at them. Like, it's a bit more of a challenge for Freddy, I think. And I found that interesting. I like that they sort of are able to raise the stakes in that matter, rather than him being sort of a standard boogeyman, because I love the first one, I really do, and I think the second one has some really interesting themes to it, although I'm not a fan of it on the whole. But I just think that it's more interesting to sort of watch Freddy take people on in a sort of person-by-person basis in the way that he does in the third film. And I think, for better or worse, it does set the template for every movie that follows that, because 4 and 5 and Freddy's Dead all had that same sort of structure to it. Like, someone would have this one thing in their life that was really important to them, and that was Freddy's in to get to that.
I definitely like that, too, about the series. It's kind of why I related to it, because you could kind of see yourself a bit as a character, and then especially like a character who watches a lot of TV, and then of course that person's going to die by TV, and you just kind of know it's coming. I think maybe where I got a little bit upset is like maybe the character who's suddenly beautiful and bad. What's her name again? I'm totally blanking on her name.
Taryn,
yes, and then she's like. She gets that moment, and then, like, literally, like, 2 minutes later, she's dead. So I kind of felt bad about that. I just wanted more of it, But on a limited budget, of course, it's hard to do.
The running gag that I have with one of my friends, John Semley, who's also a film critic up here, is we constantly reference the death of Will, the sort of Dungeons and Dragons nerd. Whenever something goes wrong for one of us, we're just like, sorry, kid, I don't believe in fairy tales. And it's just like, it's such a cheap thing, like, because that's a character that has so much for and against him. Like, he's basically a wizard in his dreams, and like in reality he's like confined to a wheelchair and depressed and borderline suicidal, and it's just like, no, he just gets wasted in like 2 seconds.
I know,
by
it's a little bit sad. But the horny kid gets to live to the next movie, which is good, I guess.
He does, but you would think that, like, between the third and fourth movie, he would have learned that, women in your bed like that are just not real.
That's right. He dies, like, in the fourth one by waterbed, right?
Stupidest way in the fourth movie. Just in the dumbest way. How did you fall for that? You gotta know, kid.
It's the power of boobies, I tell you.
I guess.
It's too strong.
Yeah.
So part 3 in the timeline of the series is kind of, I guess it's like a futuristic movie, if you will, because I guess if you're following the series, it's supposed to be like 5 years after the second one.
It would have been somewhere in the 1990-ish area.
Wow.
That it would have taken place. Which, as much as I hate it, credit to Freddy's Dead for actually making it a futuristic movie.
That's right, they do go the future route, that one.
They actually do acknowledge that now we are firmly in the future.
I guess in the future, Yaphet Kotto's wig still looks like a wig, though.
Yeah.
Poor Yaphet.
I think I was bummed that they couldn't find a way to get Lawrence Fishburne in there to recur his role from part 3.
That would have been
instead
amazing.
of dragging Yaphet Kotto into this. Because it would have made sense. It would have made total sense for that character to now be a doctor instead of an orderly.
It's true. I like that. Maybe just maybe there's a scene of Lawrence Fishburne's character just just like witnessing one of the kids getting killed and just like taking off. That's it. I'm out of here.
Yeah,
he's on to the next thing. The poster of the movie too, I remember kind of like not exactly matching up with the movie, which I was, I love the posters to the Elm Street movies. But there's like weapons on. I remember the characters have weapons on the poster that don't really line up with the movie.
It's a fun fact about those Elm Street posters. The ones that were made for 3, 4, and 5, the posters were made before they even had a script. So it was quite famous that Stephen Hopkins was asked once about what was going on with the poster for Dream Child, because it has like this weird like fetus thing inside of like a snow globe. And he was like, yeah, I would like to know what's going on in that poster too. Like none of the people involved with these films could explain to you what that poster was. They were just designed before they got a script. All they had was like a title and maybe like a brief synopsis of what was going to happen, and then that was all they had to go on.
It's amazing.
And then they would just make the poster, like that's why you have that.
The Roger Corman School of Filmmaking, except that this is like a lucrative franchise.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, the thing that's so interesting about Dream Warriors is the writing talent that went into this movie.
Oh my goodness,
is staggering to think about today.
Yeah, so it started off as a Wes Craven and Bruce Wagner script, right? And
almost none of what they did made it into the final version of the film. The majority of the film is the work of Frank Darabont and Chuck Russell. And Chuck Russell directed it. Frank Darabont, who I think at this point really needs like no introduction in the genre community. And they would, kudos to them, they would get the gig to do The Blob out of this, which was severely underrated as far as remakes go.
Definitely, and they did that movie about a year after this one, so it's a pretty good 1-2 punch for sure. You would think they would have been continuing that streak and with doing horror movies, but at that point, but I don't think The Blob did as well as TriStar wanted it to, or something. I don't remember.
Yeah, no, that's about the size of it. That's about what happened there. But pretty much everything in Dream Warriors that deals with Nancy is largely at least outlined from what Craven and Wagner did. Because one of the things with the Nancy character is they wanted, if Nancy was going to die once and for all, as she does in the film, spoilers to anyone who has not seen this 30-year-old film.
It still bums me out. Yeah, there's gonna be spoilers plenty. So
yeah, and I mean the thing is like Wes was adamant that he created her. He was gonna kill her because like that was sort of like the contingent for bringing him back into the fold in the first place. And when he saw that they weren't really going to use most of what they had, he was just sort of whatever about the whole thing. And he didn't even come back for any of the rewrites. What ended up happening was the production script went to Russell and Darabont. And what Russell and Darabont came up with was a film that cost about $20 million to make, and they were only going to get $4 million to make it.
Wow.
So then it went back to Wagner, who ended up touching it up again after Wes walked away from it. And that was just sort of what we ended up with, was this sort of mishmash of 4 different voices, but all of them really creative voices that, in tandem, it did end up working. But it was not, by all accounts, it was not a fun film to work on. In any respect.
Yeah, and looking up any background for this movie, it seemed like everyone who worked on it had a really hard time working on it. Like some of the actors seemed to have fun on it, but like Robert Englund to a lot of the people who were on the production side didn't seem to enjoy it. That could be why maybe that Robert Englund prefers part 4 than part 3. Maybe his experience.
I honestly think that would probably be a very accurate statement. Mm-hmm. I don't really think... I think the problem with Part 3 was after Part 2 underperformed. The first one was huge for New Line. It put them on the map. And then Part 2 underperformed. It was still a hit, but they knew that a lot of people who went to see it didn't like it.
Right.
So there was a lot riding on making sure that Part 3 was as good as it could possibly be, and to create a film that would sustain further entries. It's one of the earliest examples of a franchise attempting world building, because if you'll realize what it ended up doing is every horror franchise following Dream Warriors decided that it needed a mythology. Mm-hmm. This is also around the time that you'll realize that the Friday the 13th series starts getting more and more into like a mystical sort of feeling sub-story, where they just sort of start adding more supernatural elements to it, and Jason's just full-on like an unkillable zombie. And then you have the Halloween franchise that starts doing the same thing, starts layering on the mythology and dropping all these like breadcrumbs. But I really think that Dream Warriors is one of the earliest examples of what we could call franchise world building. And it was something that before that point, not a lot of franchises were doing. There were a lot of things that had a ton of sequels, but few franchises that had sort of the clarity of vision that New Line was trying to go for with A Nightmare on Elm Street. And I mean, at the end of the day, good on them, because the numbers sort of spoke for themselves. Nightmare on Elm Street 3 Dream Warriors would become, at the time, the highest grossing independent film of all time, before it would be broken the next year by The Dream Master. So, I mean, they definitely were onto something at that time, and I think they were ahead of their time in a lot of ways when it comes to how they sort of set up a franchise that would follow.
I see what you're saying. I wonder if that's like, do you think that's specifically New Line, like Robert Shea and company cooking that idea up, or do you think it's like the filmmakers kind of wanting to leave it open for the next guy to come in and do something with it?
I definitely think that Bob Shea was sort of the unsung genius of this franchise, because he would always hand the films off to really interesting and new talents that may or may not get something out of working on this. I mean, the first one was Wes, and Wes already came in there kind of with a name somewhat established. And then, you know, the second one was handed off to Jack Shoulder, who was like sort of like one of the New Line like house filmmakers. Like, right. He did so many films for New Line that it was unreal. But then he would hand it off to people like Chuck Russell, to people like Rennie Harlan, Stephen Hopkins, Rachel Talalay, who was with the franchise from the beginning and worked on all of them except the fifth one. And it was just an interesting sort of way of doing things. He would even hand the scripts off to sort of interesting people. Like Dream Master was co-written by Brian Helgeland, who would win an Oscar for L.A. Confidential, and the people who helped, the writers that helped come up with the Riddick franchise. So it was always like he always had this eye for talent. And I think in the back of his mind, he always knew where he wanted things to go. And I think it only truly got botched when Mike DeLuca came on in the early 90s and Freddy's Dead, which was very much a Mike DeLuca production. It just sort of went off the rails. Before that sort of vision that Bob Shea had, and he just sort of took the ball from Wes and sort of ran with it in an interesting direction, and I don't think that he was really afraid to fail. But when it got to Mike DeLuca, there was definitely sort of that, we need to make this goofy and we need to kill it before it kills us sort of mentality. And I don't think that really helped anybody at all.
I mean, from what I could tell from the series up until that point, like, he seemed pretty confident with the people he hired to make these movies, that he didn't really meddle too much. He kind of like let them do what they wanted to do with it, as long as they came in on budget, and then just pray for the best that it comes out as well as it did. But you could kind of sense where 6 starts kicking in that maybe there was definitely some behind-the-scenes meddling with that production.
Well, I mean, Bob Shea did meddle with these, but he meddled early on. He made sure that once these films went before the camera, they got done in a fast and efficient amount of time. But he would definitely meddle at the script stage. Like, he always had his fingers all over the scripts and trying to figure out how to keep sustaining this franchise. So he was very hands-on in that respect. And you won't hear a lot of writers from that franchise have a ton of nice things to say about Bob Shea, but that's really because Bob had an idea of a larger picture. A lot of writers, especially the writers on The Dream Child, tend to distance themselves from the work that they did because they feel like New Line was just going to change it into whatever they wanted anyway. And I think that's where his meddling sort of came in. But I think once the films were like ready to be shot, he sort of stayed out of it once the cameras started rolling.
Yeah, I think it's often productions where there's a lot of problems. I think that's when you're actually shooting and working on film productions where you have too many producers on the set, everyone offering up their opinions, and just adds a very stressful atmosphere, which often shows when the final product of the movie, like, this is not working, because everyone has their idea of how this should work, and then of course the creative side of it just kind of goes downhill. So it's interesting though that he really had that much of a hold on the series. I didn't know that about him. That's very cool that he considering how much I guess he had writing on New Lines, it makes sense that he would want to shepherd it as much as possible.
Yeah, and I mean, Dream Warriors is definitely the linchpin of the whole franchise. And when we talk about how it was, in some respects, a troubled production and a stressful production, I think that's why we didn't see Patricia Arquette come back in Part 4 to reprise her role. There are very conflicting reports as to what happened with Patricia Arquette. And honestly, I think the most credible reason why she didn't come back was because, I mean, Dream Warriors was her first big break, and it was just one of the most stressful things that she ever went through. I mean, even Chuck Russell said she was pushed way too hard while she was making that movie, and like he even feels bad about it to this day that she had to work as hard as she did. And for, a film like that, and you don't really have very good feelings, so if you ask for more money on the next one, I think you're well within your rights. But definitely. For a studio that wants to keep its costs down and doesn't think that their audience is going to care who's playing this part, because another thing that I really, really did not like about Part 4 is that Tuesday Night is a very, very poor replacement for Patricia Arquette. But it's so interesting that, like, the conflicting reports were she was pregnant and New Line fired her, which she was pregnant, but she gave birth before, like, production started. So that story doesn't entirely hold true. And then there was the belief that, that sort of backed up by Rennie Harlan and, fellow Canadian Rodney Eastman, who played Joey, which is that she wanted more money, and New Line was just like, no. But honestly, I think a lot of it was just stemming from how stressful the last one was, and sort of a questioning of, well, do I really want to put myself through that again at all? And I think that's why we never really saw her back, because it was just too much right off the bat.
And she never talks about that movie, from what I could tell. Like, there's no interviews with her about it anywhere.
She's very, very quiet about it. There was a rumor going around for the longest time, and I've never been able to confirm this, but when the film Stigmata was getting made, it was originally set up as a New Line production. And after she had signed on, she found out that New Line was on board as a distributor, and the rumor is that she lost it completely, and that Mike DeLuca had to bring it personally over to MGM so that the film would get made. So it basically switched studios. Now, I don't know how much of that is true, But that's sort of one of those common stories that I heard, that she had such bad blood towards New Line that she just did not want to work with them and would do anything possible to get out of working on a New Line production.
You mentioned to me, I think, at some point that you interviewed pretty much everyone from the series except for her. She's the only one who said no, right?
Yeah, well, eventually there was some relenting. Like, I was able to get through to her through, like, friends of friends, and I was, we were briefly in touch, but she would only do, like, some email questions, and then I just never got a response.
Oh, wow. That's unfortunate, because I think a lot of people love her from that movie.
And I'm sure she gets told it all the time, and she seems like a pleasant enough person that she would probably humor an everyday person that would just come up to her and say that. But I just do not think she wants to go on the record about any of this.
Wow.
So it's just sort of left to speculation as to just how angry she was about it. But I mean, everyone seems to be in agreement that she was just stressed out and pushed too hard on the first one. And that was sort of why she just didn't come back for the fourth.
It's sad, but we still love you, Patricia. It was critically praised, if I remember correctly. There were definitely critics who didn't like it. I remember, of course, Siskel and Ebert didn't really enjoy it on their show. At least, especially Ebert seemed to really disagree. Yeah, just did not like the series. Where it was going.
They were a lot kinder to that than they were any of the Friday the 13th films.
That's true.
Reviewed.
They really ripped those to shreds. I remember.
Yeah. or the infamous Silent Night, Deadly Night incident that went down on their show.
But then you had pretty respected critics of the time, like Janet Maslin, who liked it, and a few others. So it was interesting to see that it kind of crossed over a bit. Obviously, it did box office. It crossed over to pretty mainstream hit, but with critics too, it seemed to be the one that, hey, there's something actually of value here. It's not just a slasher sequel, which was
it's
nice.
Interesting that at least this franchise has a few films that had a pretty good critical cachet to it. The first one, of course, did fairly well with critics, or at least better than expected, and better than like the fashion of the time. This one, Dream Warriors, did very well with critics, and then of course when Wes came back to do New Nightmare, it was through the roof with critical praise on that one. So at least it was a franchise that had some critical high points to it, in to sort of temper out the lows. And I mean, you compare that to Halloween, which beyond the first one, no one really sort of went out of their way to praise any of those movies. And the Friday the 13th franchise, you'll find a lot of defenders for Jason Lives, myself among them, and not many defenders of anything else.
Yeah. I guess, because they were, I mean, all of these sequels for these franchises were cash cows for their respective studios, so they were kind of looked at like that from that point of view from critics. Like, why should I care about this? This is a studio just making another movie to make a bunch of money. I don't care. And I guess Siskel and Ebert, of course, had their thing about slasher movies in general.
And I think part of the reason why Nightmare had a better critical reputation than some of those other ones is I felt like with the Nightmare films there was someone, most likely Bob Shaye, who actually cared about the quality of these things, because he knew if they started sucking that no one would go see them. Mm-hmm. Which is why after Part 5 didn't do so well, they immediately started thinking like, okay, maybe we've worn out our welcome. As opposed to the Halloween franchise, and especially the Friday the 13th franchise, where at a certain point you just look at them and you just wonder if anyone involved at either studio or production company cared at all. And like Paramount was notoriously sort of hesitant in their love for the Friday the 13th franchise. They never liked talking about it. They sort of saw it as like a means to an end almost, and sort of treated it as such. I mean, the budget for the Dream Master was $13 million. You could make 13 or more Friday the 13th films for $13 million.
What was the budget of this movie? The budget of this movie was about $4.5 million. So they definitely decided that they need to up the budget for the next one.
Yeah, you could make like 5 Friday the 13th films with the budget of Dream Warriors.
I love it. I guess a lot of what goes into the budget of these Elm Street movies is the effects, of course, and Kevin Yeager did the effects work on this movie, and I think it's a very imaginative film. It definitely try to utilize as much of what they had at the time, pre-CGI world, and they did what they could in a limited budget. And for a long time I thought, okay, the effects in this movie don't really hold up, and they look really silly. Some of the stop motion looks kind of ridiculous, but it kind of now has like a 30-year charm to it. So, and not as hard on it.
It's so strange how we can look at the effects in that movie and how some of them hold up and some of them don't. Like, you were just bringing up the stop motion stuff, like the puppet walk with like the veins coming out of that one kid's arms, and just like Freddy walking him through the hallways like a puppet. That does not hold up. That looks bad now. But there's the quaintness of the fight between Wasson and Saxon and the Harryhausen Freddy skeleton at the end of this. That's just so comedically endearing.
It borders on Army of Darkness like territory. That scene, I remember.
Yeah, I really like to think that because Sam Raimi was sort of a fan of the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, if he didn't sort of look at that scene when he was preparing Army of Darkness, like, you know what? We could totally do Harryhausen skeletons again.
A lot of them.
By the thousands.
Of course, Freddy Snake / Penis was very memorable in the movie. Yes.
It's arguably the most widely remembered scene in the film, and for some good reasons. I mean, it is admittedly kind of a cool effect. I thought it was handled better in the Dawkins video, where you think the Freddy penis is going to come out, but the guitarist from Dawkins just smashes through the wall. And in that video, God bless Patricia Arquette, she has the best reaction on her face. Like, she just looks at it for a minute and like doesn't know how to react, and that just slowly smiles and starts laughing. And that's one of the best things I've ever seen in a music video, is Patricia Arquette's reaction to Don Dawkins blasting through the wall.
What's your favorite kill in the movie? Considering
it's a slasher Dream movie. Warriors?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would have to say. I mean, it's not the flashiest kill, but I mean, when Nancy dies, it's definitely the most affecting kill, and I think that's kind of on purpose, because we've been treated to all of these fantastical kills. I mean, honestly, if I was going to ask which one I definitely think is my favorite in terms of like flamboyance, I would say Will, the Dungeons and Dragons nerd, sort of meeting his end. I always thought that was kind of funny, and I still laugh a little bit every time I think about it. But I always thought that Nancy's death like came at an important part of that film, where we had been treated to so many fantastical things, and Nancy's death is just quick and brutish, nasty, and almost out of nowhere. Like, we expected, like, after all of these other kills, that there'd be some build-up to the killing of like the franchise's biggest character, but nope, it just kind of happens. And I always thought that was the most resounding of all of them.
I remember how surprised I was with that. I really didn't expect her to die. I mean, I don't think it was going that way. I didn't feel like the movie was kind of setting that up, even though now you can kind of see it. But, yeah, just like kind of out of nowhere, it just like dies. I'm like, and it kind of for the longest time, it really bothered me because I couldn't deal with like the fact that the heroine of the series, and I just had to die to to kind of pass the torch a bit.
Yeah, and like I was saying before, that was a bit that was totally Wes's idea in terms of how she was going to die in comparison to sort of everyone else, and they sort of kept that almost as is. Like, that bit is probably the thing that's truest to how Wes wanted that character to go out in sort of that torch-passing moment. But I like to think that from his work on the script to this, that Frank Darabont from that point on learned how to kill off major characters in every single thing that he worked on.
That's
from
true.
That point onward. Like, that was like the start of it. And like, people always like ask me when they talk about the movie, was that Frank Darabont's idea? I'm like, no, that was Wes's idea. But when I think about it, I'm like, Frank probably learned a lot from that moment.
Mm-hmm. It does have a lot of power. Like, you do really feel something for that. You feel the most for that character, of course, and then then you just like dispose of her. It's kind of it really hurts for sure.
And I think on the whole, that's probably the most affecting death of the entire franchise. Like, that one death really sort of changed the entire tone of everything that sort of came before and after it. And it's still the one that's like sort of the most emotionally resonant, probably until New Nightmare. Like, there probably was not another kill that meant as much to a viewer as that.
It's true. And I guess like having her father die too, just kind of that, just setting off the original characters, and then of course you setting up new characters for the next film, just kind of.
Yeah, and that's the other reason why I don't like 4 as much, because I think it learned that those were shocking moments, and in the early moments of the Dream Master tries to have too much of a good thing. Like, it's, look how edgy we are. We're going to kill off everyone you love in the first 20 minutes. And it's just, no, because you didn't really build to this. You just gave us a bunch of set pieces where these characters that we actually do have some attachment to from, a better movie are just dispatched with. And it's like, why did you even bother? We could have totally done this whole story with a whole new cast, because it was the 80s. It was a slasher movie franchise. You could have had Freddy fight anybody. He could have looked at these kids that survived Dream Warriors and been like, fuck that, I'm not taking them on again. But no. No, we had to find a way to falsely up the ante, and I always thought there was something so callous and cynical about how Dream Master handled things, and as opposed to how Dream Warriors handled things.
Gotcha. That is just generally the introduction of Nancy Thompson into the series. I think was such a great thing for the movie, and just seeing her grown up, even though I guess technically, what is it, like 3 years later from the first movie. Now she's an adult, and she's spending her life taking care of kids and using her mind. No booby traps, though.
Nope.
Use her power of booby traps in this one, which is sad. But I just like seeing her, just having her in the series as a through line in the series, and of course her coming back in New Nightmare was also another brilliant stroke for the series, and of course I think a perfect way to end the series for sure. But having her in this one and just seeing her again just was enough for me to really love the movie, especially. And prefer it over some of the other ones for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm going to bring this up only as like a slight credit to where the franchise would head in the future. While I think that Freddy vs. Jason is a terrible Freddy movie and a pretty great Jason movie, I do appreciate that it ignores pretty much anything that happened after Part 3.
It does, yeah.
It's most directly connected to Dream Warriors, and I'm like, that's great. Like, if there's one lesson that you learned about how to make a Nightmare on Elm Street film, it's like, forget like the 3 films that followed it.
I only saw that movie once, and I did not like it at all. I saw it at the theater. But I agree, though, it was definitely more of a Jason movie than a Freddy movie, for sure. Even though,
and you know what? I wasn't even a huge Jason fan, but like when I was watching Freddy vs. Jason, I'm like, yeah, Jason's pretty good in this. And like I was like, I don't think I should be feeling that right now.
Yeah.
It's a great Jason movie, though. I'll stand by it on those grounds.
Yeah, maybe I should revisit it.
Yeah, as a Jason movie, it's pretty great. As a Freddy movie, it is awful.
Yeah, I mean, I always thought the 6th one was the worst of the series.
It is.
And then
it is.
Because the comedy doesn't work at all, and I don't know what they were thinking, why they decided that it needed to be a comedy, first off, and then have a lot of blandness to it as well. And then, although the idea of Alice Cooper as his father is kind of interesting, but they just didn't really utilize it enough.
Yeah, that is like the only interesting thing in that movie, though. Like when you really break it down, there's nothing to that movie. It's just terrible from the opening frames bad.
Yeah.
And like all the way up to the absolutely horrible 3D conclusion that didn't even look good in theaters.
It did not look good in theaters at all. I remember that. It was this is what we're...
And it was so weird because the whole movie was conceived to be in 3D, but New Line would only pony up the money to shoot the climax in 3D. And they didn't bother to change the script. Go back and watch the rest of the movie again, and you'll see how many 3D gags and how many things are supposed to be in 3D that aren't. Like the falling nails when like that kid's like ear, like hearing device explodes. Like that's clearly supposed to be 3D. Everything with the Breckenmeyer like video game kill supposed to be 3D, and they paid for none of that.
Wow.
But they did not change the script. So the least 3D looking part at the climax is the one thing they shot in 3D.
It's amazing. I'm glad you defended Part 5, because while the problem of Part 5 is kind of addressing a very serious subject for an audience who wasn't really wanting a serious subject like abortion.
Oh yeah,
pregnancy.
teens do not want to think about getting pregnant.
No,
so that's like the last thing to get kids out to the theater to think about is unwanted pregnancy.
It's a very strange way to go, but then like the visuals of that movie are really interesting, and I like kind of like the gothic tone of it. I like that it kind of tried to do something with that, and whereas some of the other ones don't do that yet. But then
and I mean, Part 5 doesn't even have a huge body count, but the kills that it does have are memorable and just as nightmarish as you can get. Like, even the goofy sort of comic book kid getting killed. Yeah. Like, just the design of all of these is just so incredibly inventive. Like, in terms of, like, making the most ridiculous, like, murder scenes ever committed to film, like, a reality, I think Part 5 does a great job of it. Like, that motorcycle kill is probably... I mean, you can ask anyone who knows the franchise. I don't think you'd find anyone who would say that that's, like, a bad scene. That is impressive.
It's definitely impressive. I think that's where the series has its strength, is, like, creating all these elaborate death scenes and making them fun and just putting a lot of work and effort into something that could be considered pretty silly and stupid, but then the craftsmanship behind it kind of makes you just really enjoy what they're doing. Like, they're clearly, the people who are doing the effects are having a fun time, and I like the mix of a lot of the elements of 5 and 4 and 3. I think, to me, the series really works when they're just trying to mix it up and make it fun, and also try to put a stamp on it as well. I like that. I think that was definitely where the Nightmare on Elm Street series had its strength in the 80s, whereas some of the Halloween movies were kind of like Part 4 was getting kind of bland, with the return of Michael Myers, and I know Part 4 has its fans, but I think it's a pretty bland movie, especially when you compare it to an Elm Street movie, and probably a Halloween movie had a higher budget, I'd imagine, too. But they don't just make the most out of that. They kind of just rely on the idea of Michael Myers being scary rather than trying to just shake things up and make it interesting with just having ideas, just throwing ideas out. Even though the ideas don't always work, they just throw things out there, and I kind of always admired that about the Elm Street series. So, to me, they just tried something.
And it was weird with the Halloween franchise in that it seems like at a certain point they stopped trying to remake the first Halloween with the sequels, and they all started to remake Halloween 2 instead. Like, that was somehow the better idea, because you would have Michael Myers movies that would just feel like action films. Like, and not really like a horror film. Like, there would always be these scenes where a bunch of people are trying to take out Michael Myers at once.
Right.
Like, you just get a gang of hillbillies together. Like, go out hunting Michael Myers. And it's just, I mean, why do we need that? Like, the last thing I want to see from a Halloween movie is, like, a shootout. And I think the one thing that, Jason Goes to Hell gets right is they mount that same kind of siege scene at the beginning of Jason Goes to Hell, and it's the only time it's ever effective.
Right.
And I think that was the best thing, is that it's, like, effective right off the top.
That's true.
It's like, we're just gonna blow this person to smithereens. When you couldn't do that to Michael Myers, but this, totally fine.
I know, and at the same time, they load that all up front, and then the rest of the movie is kind of just a mess. Jason Goes to Hell.
I can almost defend Jason Goes to Hell in some weird ways, in that I appreciate just how committed it is to its level of just stupid and crazy. And it also, the whole thing with Jason's heart being able to pass on evil, that actually helps me excuse why the ambulance driver was the killer at the end of Part 5. I'd be like, fucking Jason's heart possessed him, man. Dude, the answer's right there. Like, we had to wait 5 movies, but it's right there.
Not just revenge, it was his heart.
No, it was a long con. That ambulance driver ate that heart. Guaranteed. That's what happened.
Love it. But for me, the big sin of Jason Goes to Hell is making Aaron Gray dowdy, not hot. So I can't defend it for that reason alone.
I think that the character of Creighton Duke really heightens any qualms that I have about the movie. First of all, it's a character named Creighton Duke.
That's true. He is definitely the highlight there, yeah.
Who's a bounty hunter who has devoted his life to tracking down Jason Voorhees. Which is a character we should have had in all of these movies. He should have been the Loomis of the franchise from the beginning.
Just kind of shows
Just
up.
Every movie, Creighton Duke shows up. Like, once we killed off the drunk from the first couple of movies, Creighton Duke should have taken over.
Just hiding there behind the trees, waiting.
It should have been like the brother of the crazy guy.
Love that.
My brother told you were all doomed. Would have been great.
Any final thoughts about Nightmare on Elm Street 3 before we wrap it up?
No, other than I really do think that it was sort of the best of the franchise, and I think it really does stand the test of time, even in comparison with the rest of the franchise. And I think that its impact on the box office, especially in 1987, even as early in the year as February, really can't be understated, because this is the film that upset Platoon, which was atop the box office for like what seemed like forever at the beginning of 1987. And the only thing to dethrone it was Lethal Weapon. And Lethal Weapon almost didn't dethrone Dream Warriors. So
it took a while for it to dream, because Lethal Weapon was kind of a slow hit. It kind of like stuck around, yeah.
So was Dream Warriors, really, even though both that and Lethal Weapon debuted at number 1. They were films that played for a very long time, and very slowly made their money.
Which is unheard of for horror, too. Horror usually is a hit out the gate, and then it just kind of each weekend kind of disappears, but not for this one.
It was, and I mean, that's a really interesting thing, too, but I mean, it's very interesting that 1987 really led off with hard R-rated films being huge hits, and it sort of set the tone for the year, but by the end of the year, you would see a lot gentler fare sort of take over. But it started off as a pretty hard and harsh year in terms of what people were seeing. And then by the end of the year, it's like everyone got their fill of like bloody and violent, like right at the beginning in like January, February, and March with Platoon, Dream Warriors, and Lethal Weapon. And then by the end of the year, you have Three Men and a Baby ruling the box office with an iron fist.
That's true, because in January I talked about how there were no hits really until Outrageous Fortune, which was an R-rated comedy, suddenly was the box office champ. And it stuck around for a long time. Just like, it's funny how movies, that was the model, that R-rated movies could have legs at a box office, and even R-rated movies for kids, like for teenagers, like The Lost Boys, kind of like could do really well at the box office, and stick around, stay around for a long time. But then, things definitely took a turn at the end of '87.
'87 was really like a pivot point year. Like, this was like one of the last years where an R-rated film could become a slow hit, and I think the only one after this that was really that notable for the rest of the '80s was probably Die Hard, in terms of being a slow hit. I mean, the next year, The Dream Master would be atop the box office for several weeks, which is something that, Dream Warriors couldn't do, but that was something that was one of those films that had a stranglehold. Like, by that point, the franchise was huge, and I think '87 was sort of the last year where you could have, like, that slow-burning, R-rated hit film.
It's so interesting that you could do that then. I just wish we were living in those times again. But
yes, me too.
I want to thank you again for recommending The Bye Bye Man, because it's something I wouldn't have. Of course, the poster art and the trailer didn't really sing like, okay, I need to go see this. But your review and the way you talked about it, just kind of like, okay, this is something I would definitely enjoy if it was 1987 and playing in the theaters. And thank you for recommending that, because I did very much enjoy it, even if it's not completely a great film, but it's even if it's a silly film, I really enjoyed it. And I've actually recommended it to other people, and they've seen it, and I've enjoyed it as well. So
yeah, it's good fun if you don't go into it like trying to be cynical about it.
Right.
Like, if you just meet it on its own sort of goofy terms, which everyone in the film knows that they've signed up to do the Bye Bye Man.
Right.
Like, and I actually, speaking of nightmares, I had a pretty great dream the other night. I had a dream that I was a genius, and I came up with a Bye Bye Man John Wick crossover.
Ooh.
In that the only way for John Wick to get out of his current situation is he has to take out the Bye Bye Man. So the so the man you send to kill the boogeyman literally has to kill the boogeyman.
Andrew eats, sleeps, and even dreams movies, guys.
I do. It's sad sometimes.
I love it. I only have nuclear Holocaust dreams these days. I don't know why I do, but I do. So I wish I could have Bye Bye Man John Wick dreams, because that would make me so happy.
Well, hopefully I've planted the seed.
I'll take some Freddy dreams, because I never really had Freddy dreams growing up. I wish I did. I mean, the only recurring horror character that I would dream that I would have is Jason. And that's probably because I did see a lot of those movies in the theater at a very young age or on video at a very young age, and just like it just and just for pure scare value, they were kind of frightening when you're a kid, and those movies that penetrated into my dreams. But Freddy hasn't yet, but I'm hoping he will, because I think we need a little Freddy these days.
Yeah, the saddest nightmare I ever had, and it's the only nightmare I've ever had tied to a horror movie. And I think it was because I was going through like a rough patch in my life at the time. The only horror movie to give me a nightmare was the remake of The Haunting.
Ooh.
And I barely remember the nightmare, but I remember I was in that house and a bunch of things were scaring me. And I remember, and I woke. It was like the day after I saw the remake of The Haunting, which was terrible. I woke up the next day. I was so pissed. Like, I wasn't even like waking up in a sweat. I was like, that was it? That was the movie? I was so angry.
Wow, The Haunting. That is truly frightening.
Yes, there's no amount of Hypnosil that'll make that go away.
No way. Thank you so much, Andrew, for joining me for this. I really had a lot of fun talking about it. And
thank you so much for having me. It was a blast.
And we got to talk again about something else in the future, hopefully.
Yes, maybe next year with the next film.
And I hope people come to their senses and put this book out, because a coffee table book on the Nightmare on Elm Street series is a must-have for fans, for sure.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
I appreciate it.
I'll talk to you soon.
Yes. Bye.
Bye.
A Nightmare on Elm Street, Part 3. Freddy's back.
That was great. If you've seen 1 and 2, you have to see number 3. Totally bizarre. A total nightmare.
It was better than all of them combined.
Freddy's a nut.
A Nightmare on Elm Street, Part 3. Dream Warriors. Rated R.
Now playing at a theater near you.
I always love those audience reaction TV spots, so I threw it on the end there. Hope you like that. Thank you again, Andrew. That was pretty amazing. And Nightmare 3, we love you. 30 years. You're on 30 years now. Wow. All right, a couple more titles. This one I talked about before in the podcast, so I'll be brief about it. Here's a TV spot.
So, do you always bring an extra girl when you go out?
Amanda's in the back seat.
She nice? The girl is sex.
Watts is in the front seat.
Congratulations on your latest coup. Yeah.
And Keats in the hot seat. Paramount Pictures presents a John Hughes production.
You're gonna love this one. I can feel it already.
Some Kind of Wonderful, directed by Howard Deutsch, rated PG-13.
Now playing at a theater near you.
Some Kind of Wonderful. I think fans of the podcast know already that my favorite of the John Hughes teen films. I could confirm this for sure now. Yeah, I kind of waffled between like 16 Candles and this for a while, because I always thought 16 Candles was really charming, and I still do. I saw 16 Candles recently in the theater with my wife. We went to go see that at a screening here, and I love that film, but it doesn't hold up quite as well as I wanted it to. It's definitely a movie of its time, and it has a great ending, of course, but also this movie. I think this movie, Some Kind of Wonderful, really does it for me. It really hits all the sweet spots, checks off all the things in a list of a teen movie that I want. It has engaging actors and characters who have a lot of chemistry with each other. It has something to say about these kids and their relationships with each other. It has it just kind of relate to them more than any other characters from the John Hughes collection library, because I see myself in a lot of the characters. I see myself in Eric Stoltz's Keith, and in Mary Stuart Masterson's Watts, and even some of Amanda Jones, Leah Thompson. I think John Hughes was wise enough to put himself in all the, put the audience in all three of the characters' shoes in a way to form a real love triangle. I think it wasn't a real serious love triangle in Pretty in Pink. I don't think we ever really. Some of us hoped that she would end up with Ducky at the end, but I don't know if everyone was hoping for that. I know famously, we talked about that movie, how the studio made John Hughes change the ending, the original ending, where she goes to the dance with Ducky, though I don't know how much of that is a romance. But they felt bad for the teenage audience, the girls who demanded more Blaine, and so they added that ending with Andrew McCarthy, and it never rang true, of course, and it's beyond that in this movie, though. I mean, they fixed that ending, but there's a lot more going on in this movie to me. I feel like there's a real love story here between Keith and Watts that's just always bubbling and threatening to bubble over in every scene they're doing together. And that scene, the kiss, where he practices kissing with Watts, and the music queuing up, and the way the camera moves, and the perfect music and images together, just so wonderful. And we can't say it enough how much I love this film, and all the actors in the film just do such a great job. It's not just the three leads, but you have a lot of great supporting cast. You have John Ashton as the dad. As the dad who's always angry because he wants his son to go to college and do better for himself than he did, and it rings true. And you have the sister, Maddie Corman, who's a great character. You have Elias Koteas. My God, he's so amazing in this movie. He's like, how James Spader is so amazing in Pretty in Pink. Elias Koteas is amazing in this one. I think, looking up some background information for this movie, Elias Koteas, he was one of the very few actors that John Hughes allowed to riff on his screenplay, because usually John Hughes' screenplay is like the Bible, that's the word, that's what he wants you to say, and that's what you do. But he allowed him to kind of riff, and most of the stuff in the movie is kind of coming from the actor, and you kind of see it coming through. It just feels so fresh. It kind of invigorates the movie, and it makes the film feel real and alive, and I love that about it. Scott Coffey is the guy who kind of has eyes for Watts, China Phillips, kind of just there, Craig Sheffer is the jerk. He's no James Spader in Pretty in Pink, but he does a good job of playing the jerk. I've got to say. Molly Hagan, the girl with the big hair, big frizzy hair. I just love this movie. Howard Deutsch does a great job. I mean, you can't discount his work on this movie. I feel like, John Hughes production is John Hughes production. It's like John Hughes, but I think Howard gives it he has a good eye in the movie. I think he kind of makes up visually some of the things that are wrong with Pretty in Pink as well, which might be a little bit more flat. This movie feels very much in tune with its environment, a thing that you could really picked up on recent viewings of the movie, like how it really feels like an LA movie. And then looking up locations for it, it's all locations that are not too far from where I live. They're in San Pedro High School, and not too incredibly far from Long Beach. And so I need to go to all these locations and see for myself, experience the places of some kind of wonderful. It's a very LA movie, the scenes. Just go to the museum, the Hollywood Bowl. Just really feels very much in tune with its environment. I love that about it, and I love movies that can do that, and not just feel like they can be anywhere USA. Not just we're no longer in the suburbs of Chicago. We moved to the suburbs of Chicago, and so it's kind of a nice way to end his teen cycle, I think, with some kind of wonderful for a while, I'm like, oh man, no more John Hughes teen movies. He's past that. He's making movies for adults. She's got to have a baby and Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, and I was bummed out when that happened. But then, now looking back at it, like, yeah, you have to end there because you don't get any better than this, I think, for the teen films. I think, for me, this will always be the underrated one, the one that I love the most. And, yeah, always will. So, thank you, Some Kind of Wonderful. And let's get into our last title. Here is the trailer.
Can I help you?
Yeah. I need 3 boxes of a dozen Trojans, 1 regular, 1 ribbed, and 1 lubricated.
Mm-hmm.
A sanitary sponge, 1 KY jelly, 1 Caramex contraceptive cream, and an herbal douche. Oh, and can you fill this prescription for low overall 21?
You don't take any chances, do you?
Working Girls, the highly acclaimed new feature film by Lizzie Borden from Miramax Films.
Okay, Working Girls. Not Working Girl with Sigourney Weaver, but Working Girls, the Lizzie Borden film. And I saw this movie on video. I didn't see it in the theater when it came out on video. And I was like, oh, what is this? And, and I checked it out. And it was kind of surprising. I wasn't sure what I was in for. Now, Working Girl should imply what it's about, but I was young and foolish. I'm going to read the plot summary that I read and then I got off of IMDb because I liked it. A day in the life of several prostitutes in an upscale Manhattan whorehouse. The film is a stark portrayal of the women prostitutes, the male customers, and the motivations of both. Watch as the madam manipulates her girls. Watch as she answers the phone by saying, "Hello, John. What's new and different?" Watch as the Johns try to manipulate the girls. Part nudie exploitation, part sociological thesis. Yeah, I mean, if you want to see, I mean, the 80s was a good time to watch movies about prostitutes, I gotta say, before it became kind of a different thing in the 90s, I would say. You had Angel, you had Crimes of Passion, you had and then you had horror a little bit later, but you had Working Girls, which definitely gets down to the nitty gritty and goes for the realism and I guess definitely a feminist look about prostitution. It's no Best Little Whorehouse in Texas, which is also really entertaining, and I like that movie. It's a very different movie here, and I just liked it. I just think watching it recently again, it just kind of holds up. Actors, a lot of actors who I don't think went on to much else. Kind of like, they're all green, they're all new, but they're all good and believable, and that's something that can be said about independent films. You can kind of like pluck these actors out of kind of seemingly nowhere, and then put them in a film, and then kind of surprised by where it can go and the places that actors can take things. And Lizzie Borden had previously made Born in Flames, a good film, and this is her follow-up. And got some attention when it came out, for sure. An early Miramax title, before they became a force to be reckoned with a few years later in the 90s. I don't know what's happened with Lizzie Borden's career as a director, though. She'd made that movie with Patrick Bergin and Sean Young called Love Crimes. I remember that wasn't really well received. Then a couple of TV things, and I haven't seen her name around much, so kind of curious about where she is now as a filmmaker. But I always liked Working Girls. A good film for sure, a strong film, and a good way to end February which had a lot of different kinds of things to offer. Yeah, I had some things that had some strong reactions to that I didn't like. So I'm going to get to that list now of worst to best. Number 17, Beyond Therapy. Number 16, From the Hip. Number 15, I would say, The Death Before Dishonor. Kind of boring. Number 14, I would go for Rage of Honor. Number 13, Scorpion. Number 12, The Good Wife. Australian film. Rachel Ward. 11, Light of Day. Number 10, Number One But a Bullet. Number 9, Square Dance. Number 8, 84, Charing Cross Road. Number 7, Working Girls. Number 6, Over the Top, because it's so damn fun. Number 5, Dead of Winter. Number 4, Black Widow, which you loved, but eclipsed by The Power of Mannequin at number 3. And then number 2, Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Part 3, Dream Warriors, and number 1, Some Kind of Wonderful. So I'd say like top 5 is really some really solid films there, and top 10 in general. Like there's some good films there in February. So February had some good stuff. Coming in March though, we have a lot of good stuff coming up there too. Definitely some solid films coming out in March. Some cult films, some movies that have stood the test of time. Looking at the list here, some movies that have that you'll know well, and some little things, and some rinky-dink things, and some not so good things. So you get a lot of variety for sure. This podcast has gone on long enough. You're tired of listening to me. Thank you for following this show, and thank you for everything. Thank you for your reviews on IMDb, iTunes. Please review us if you haven't, or just give us a little rating on iTunes. The more people who do, the better. You can reach out to the show, Meep at cinema2meep.com. You could check us out on Facebook. Retro Movie Love and Cinema to Meep both have pages there, and Twitter. We both have Twitter thingies. And just reach out and touch us. Thank you again to Ben Sher and Andrew for joining me on this episode. And hopefully we'll have more people coming in and talking about the movies they love from 87. It's a good thing. And we have some more show ideas coming up too. Just gotta get some time, damn it, to get to these things. Love talking about movies, but man, life gets in the way, doesn't it? Thank you again, guys, and talk to you soon. Love you all. Ciao for now.
you want to lose weight, just a diet.
Oh, diets are no use. It's those jelly donuts. They called to me in the middle of the night. Hollywood, Hollywood, come and get me, Hollywood. I can't stay away from them.
Do you want me to kiss you or feel you up or anything?
You want to die young?
Well, what kind of question is that?
Just sit here and shut up.
You don't have a boyfriend, do you?
No.
See, a lot of guys I know think that you're
What?
confused.
Oh.
See, but I know it's just an act. Do you know how I know?
Enlighten me.
Because you radiate this sexual vibe. And if you wanted to, you could be a girl like that.
Ray, this is 1987. Did you know that a girl can be whatever she wants to be?
I know, my mom's a plumber.
Break his heart and break your face.
This is it, Jennifer. Your big break in TV. Welcome to prime time, bitch.